Bonsoir. Good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to see so many people here tonight. So welcome, Madame la greffière. Est-ce que moi je dois dire aussi? Okay. So welcome, everyone. I have to say that this is my first time chairing a public meeting with our new equipment, so I hope that my colleagues will bear with me on this. So, and this is a really special day as well. It's St. Patrick's Day, donc bonne Saint Patrick à tous. Donc c'est un plaisir. Madame la greffière.
Your Worship, all public meetings of Moncton City Council are simultaneously translated. Hearing devices are available. If you have the right to address City Council in the official language of your choice, meetings are also simulcast in both languages on the City of Moncton's YouTube channel and can be found on our website at moncton.ca. If you've registered with the City Clerk's office prior to the agenda deadline, 7 days before the meeting, you will be given 5 minutes for your presentations. All other public presentations will be given 2 minutes. You will receive a reminder when 1 minute is remaining. Please note, no presenter shall speak disrespectfully of council, staff, or a member of the general public. The use of offensive or profane language will not be tolerated. Any breach of this guideline may result in the presenter being asked to leave the council chambers at the discretion of the chair. Un service d'interprétation simultanée est offert durant nos réunions. Vous avez le droit de parler dans la langue officielle de votre choix. Les casques d'écoute servent à la traduction sont disponibles. Ces réunions sont diffusées en français et en anglais sur la plateforme YouTube. Les réunions sont également diffusées sur l'Internet à moncton.ca. Si vous vous êtes inscrit auprès du bureau de la greffière avant la date limite, c'est-à-dire 16 jours avant la séance, vous aurez 5 minutes pour effectuer votre présentation. Toute présentation du public aura droit à 2 minutes. Une cloche sonnera pour vous indiquer qu'il ne vous reste qu'1 minute. S'il vous plaît, notez. Aucun présentateur ne devra manquer de respect lorsqu'il parlera du Grand Conseil, d'un membre du personnel ou du grand public. Le langage blasphématoire et les propos offensants ne seront pas tolérés. Le président ou la présidente pourra demander à tout présentateur qui enfreint cette directive de quitter la salle du Conseil. Madam Deputy Mayor, we have an agenda before us, and I believe that there's a change.
Yes, do we have we want to add something to the agenda, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Just 1 second. I just have to give Councillor Richard la parole. Là.
Merci beaucoup. So I would like to move a motion to resolution to appoint a designated councillor until the next deputy mayor is appointed. And I'd also like to have this moved to the beginning of the meeting, at the very beginning. Should I read this out or?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Here's what I found.
Donc, logement. So I need a mover and a seconder. So conseiller Richard and conseiller Butler. Okay, merci. Donc, on the question. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Merci à tous.
Okay, Conseiller Richard, you can put your resolution on the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Greffière. Whereas Mayor Don Arnold was appointed to the Federal Senate on March 7, 2025, which created a vacancy in the office of the mayor for the City of Moncton, and whereas in accordance with subsection 48(4) of the Local Governance Act, the deputy mayor acts in place of the mayor if the office of the mayor is vacant, and whereas in accordance with subsection 48(5) of the Local Governance Act, in the absence of the deputy mayor or the inability of the deputy mayor to act while the office of the mayor is vacant, council shall appoint a councillor to act in the place of the mayor. That, under the authority of section 48(5) of the Local Governance Act, in the absence of the deputy mayor or the inability of the deputy mayor to act, council appoints the previous deputy mayor, Councillor Sean Crossman, to act in the place of the mayor until May 20th, 2025, and while so acting possesses the powers and shall perform the duties of the mayor.
So we have a motion. Do we have a mover and a seconder for that motion? Donc,
Richard?
I just did, right?
Yeah, Richard, and we need a seconder. Butler?
so, okay, c'est bon. So on the question,
Are there
no?
any questions?
Are there comments or questions?
So it's been moved by Councillor Richard and seconded by Councillor Butler.
Oui.
Yep.
Yes.
Not yet. Yes. We were going to do it electronically, but we can do it show of hands.
Okay. So all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. So opposed, motion is passed unanimously. Donc, Conseiller Crossman, welcome. Merci. Thank you for accepting.
Le prochain item, c'est les déclarations des conflits d'intérêts, conflict of interests. Are there any this evening?
Are there any conflicts of interest? No,
Seeing none.
there are none.
Next is adoption of minutes, les adoptions des procès-verbaux. Et aujourd'hui, on a deux, novembre le 18, 2024 et décembre le 16, 2024.
So do I have a mover and a second? Donc, Conseiller Richard et Conseillère Edgett. On the question, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Or do they need to raise their hands because we're not using electric?
No, that's okay.
Electronic,
Aye.
it's okay. Opposed? C'est beau, merci.
There are no consent agendas. First up are public and administration presentations, exposés du public et de l'administration. Et les exposés du public, aujourd'hui, on fait la reconnaissance du Festival d'humour Hubcap avec Marshall Button et Robert Galland. Et je pense que la mairesse a des discours.
Merci, Madame la greffière. En fait, on a deux présentations ce soir. On demande aux gens d'attendre après les présentations si vous avez des questions. So, any questions, wait until after the presentations. So, this evening, it's really an honor and a privilege for me to welcome. Donc, pour notre première présentation publique ce soir, nous avons le plaisir d'accueillir Messieurs Marshall Button et Robert Galland. Bienvenue, messieurs, bonne soirée. Et c'est vraiment un plaisir de vous accueillir dans la salle du Conseil ce soir. We are honored to recognize two exceptional Monctonians this evening, Marshall Button et Robert Galland. Marshall et Robert sont bien connus pour leur contribution à de nombreuses initiatives artistiques et culturelles de notre ville. Bien que leur contribution touche non seulement notre ville, mais je dirais la province et peut-être le Canada aussi. Hein? Donc, but if their heads are given to the serious work of managing events or leading programming, their hearts are given to laughter. Et quelle chance nous avons de jouir du fruit de leurs efforts. In addition to their many other accomplishments, Marshall and Robert form the backbone of the Hubcap Comedy Festival, an annual event that provides at least one good reason to laugh in the darkest month of the year. Donc, the festival was created with that very intention to bring cheer at a time of the year when it is most needed, and as a clever way to bring people to our downtown at a time when business is rather slow. It was an out-of-the-box idea, but what a great one. And it's worked so amazingly well. Donc, ses débuts, quelque peu modestes, il y a déjà 25 ans, se sont développés grâce à la vision, au dynamisme, à la ténacité et au dévouement de Marshall et de Robert. Marshall et Robert, au cours des 25 dernières années, vous avez été des ambassadeurs du rire et du plaisir pour notre ville et notre province aussi. Thank you both for bringing us together to laugh, to celebrate, and to enjoy each other's company. Félicitations encore, longue vie à votre festival et je vous inviterai à venir accepter les certificats de la ville de Moncton.
Vous avez la parole. You just have to push the button. There you go. You're set.
Alors, merci, quel honneur. On est ravis d'être ici pour accepter votre reconnaissance de nos efforts depuis 25 ans. We wish to acknowledge also that we wouldn't be here without our partners, and principally this great city that we call our own. You've been there since year one. I think Robert, as I pass over, will just touch a little bit on the impact we make not only in the area of laughter, but in terms of our local economy. But I want to thank you from the entire team at the Hubcap for 25 years of laughter. And I especially want to thank you all for giving us such great material over the years.
Thank you all so much. It's been my pleasure to work with this festival for so long. I've been with it 23 out of the 25 years. I was looking for a real job when Ken Kelly asked me to come in and do this. And apparently I still need a job, so if anybody's hiring. But no, we have made a big impact in the city. When I first started with the festival, we were doing about a dozen shows. Now we do 40 shows over 2 weeks in French and English. You know, we have an impact. We generate $1.5 million to $2 million in economic spin-off for the region here. It makes a big difference. We're the largest non-televised comedy festival in Canada. We are recognized as that as across the nation. We tour comedians across the country. So we have grown our impact significantly as we've grown this festival from a dream to this massive reality that we have. So, and again, it wouldn't be possible without the great support of this city and the municipality's efforts to help us grow this. So thank you all so very much.
Merci encore. Et qu'est-ce qu'on ferait sans les arts? Hein? Bravo.
C'est ça. Merci.
Bravo.
Don't leave in case there's any questions after the next presentation.
Okay.
The next presentation is by Reverend Aaron Bellard on 1010 St. George Project, and I believe he's sharing the floor with Allison Frizzi. So,
Welcome, Mr. Billard. It's a pleasure to have you here this evening, and Madame Frizzi aussi. So go ahead, please.
oh, turned on. There you go. All good.
To the members and staff of the Moncton City Council, it is an honor to stand here and to address you in this sacred chamber of democracy, where you've been elected to represent the citizens of Moncton, and while being fiscally prudent, you are also called to seek the welfare of the city. My name is Reverend Aaron Billard, and for the past 20 years, I have been the minister of St. John's United Church on the corner of Alma and Victoria, here in the downtown core. Many years ago, the minister at St. John's, the rabbi at Tiferes Israel, and the priest at St. Bernard's would regularly address the mayor and council about concerns for the city. They were called the Holy Trinity, and so it is in that spirit I stand with you today. I think this is a perfect time to address you, as this is the last week of winter. Thursday is the first day of spring, and today is St. Patrick's Day, which means you're all in a good mood. One of my duties at St. John's is to visit seniors, whether at home, in nursing homes, or in hospital, and as you have heard, there is an epidemic of loneliness. I believe this to be true. My knowledge isn't based on academics, but rather it is based on knocking on doors. It used to be that people were happy to see you and tell you about their grandkids or their litany of medical concerns. I once spoke with a retired professor who told me that when he and his retired friends get together, they call it an organ recital. But now, with 24-hour news cycles focused on American politics, constant threats of war and environmental disasters, seniors can be anxious, upset, and isolated. Last week, I was driving down St. George Street when I saw a woman in her 80s pushing a shopping cart, though I am certain she had not been shopping. I have members of my church cutting back on their offering because of the cost of living. We owe it to our seniors whose community service keeps Moncton as one of the greatest Canadian cities to live in, who cared for us when we were all growing up. So now let's show them how much we care. With 1010 St. George, we have an opportunity before us as Monctonians for our seniors to gather in a designated space where there are social programs, music, exercise, fun, and community. The Caring Kitchen is located on at St. John's United Church in Alma Street, where people are offered a hot lunch and some dignity 5 days a week. Each day I drive past the City Club in Alma, where business people drink wine and have lunch and learns. Why can't there be a center for seniors to go, drink tea and coffee, and share the word of the day from Live at 5, and maybe win that Rhine River cruise? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Worship, Council. My name is Allison Fries. I'm the Managing Director with the Multicultural Agency of the Greater Moncton area. We are here to lend our support and collaboration to the proposed senior center at 1010 St. George Street. Currently, we have 368 registered senior clients in our Magma database from around the world. Many of these seniors have joined their family members in our community and helped support their settlement in our region by assisting with childcare and additional familial support. Magma recognizes the critical role a senior center would play in supporting seniors in our community and sees an opportunity to collaborate by offering intergenerational, intercultural, and inclusive programs that will benefit both seniors and newcomers in the Greater Moncton area. We have had meaningful conversations with the Planning Committee and have submitted a proposal outlining activities that Magma could contribute to the programming at Senior Center 1010, fostering mutual understanding, cultural exchange, and a stronger sense of community. Some of the proposed collaborative activities include language conversation circles, a human library and storytelling, as well as intergenerational cultural exchange activities. These proposed activities between seniors and newcomers will build mutual understanding and lasting connections. Both groups experience improved mental well-being, reduced social isolation, and enriched cultural awareness. Magma supports this dedicated senior center as an opportunity for meaningful engagement and socialization, and see it as a vibrant hub for intergenerational and intercultural activities, fostering an inclusive and welcoming Moncton for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So now, are there questions from members of council to our two presenters? There are no questions. So thank you again, everyone, for coming, and thank you to those of you who are here tonight with regards to 1010 St. George Street. This issue will be brought to a public meeting of council in April, so we hope to see you all at that meeting. So merci à tous. Thank you.
Next is planning matters at Question du Marigny, and the first up is an introduction to zoning bylaw amendments, neighborhood and housing initiatives, and I believe that our CAO will introduce this.
We give a couple seconds for council to. Merci, Madame la Greffière. Merci, Madame la Maire Adjointe. I guess just to introduce the subject to council this afternoon. Again, we all know the important need of housing in our community with the increased population and need for housing. We also recall that through our successful bid with the federal government to access housing accelerator funding, there's a number of conditions that have been set out in that, I guess, funding. Today is first introduction of the zoning bylaw changes. Again, with understanding that it will come back to council for a public hearing, as well as it will be going forward to the Planning Advisory Committee as well. So again, as an introduction to this motion, we'll send it off to Josh to go through the presentation.
Merci, Monsieur Serge. Bonsoir, Josh. Good to see you.
Hello, and And thank you for having me. So as the CAO mentioned, the item before you is an introduction, being the Missing Middle Housing Initiative. So this is something that we've taken on through our commitment to CMHC and the Housing Accelerator Fund, with the work beginning around this time last year internally with staff to understand the approach, how we wanted to look at this project and understand that there is going to be a unique Moncton solution to this type of work. So it's not something that you can easily look at what other municipalities are doing and adopt those standards or just try to apply them to our bylaw. We looked at this from quite I believe, a unique perspective, and a unique perspective that is done to Moncton. And as you'll see through some of my later slides, I'm sure council's had a chance to look at the presentation. It is quite long, but very visual in order to provide that kind of visual context and the whole aspect of the first question when we sat down with Bill and the team was to sort of say, we need to understand what this can look like from a street level. And I believe the product that's before you tonight reflects that. So again, if you look watching the visual, this presentation was put together with Jim Scott and Trace Planning. Jim can't be here tonight, so I'm going to be probably two parts of the show. And then when we come to the public hearing and future presentations, we'll be tag teaming this one together. So as council is familiar, we our zoning map. This is a slightly older one, but just to provide the context in terms of what's residential, what's commercial, what's in the downtown, what's outside, what's industrial, what's institutional. These are the type of questions that we're looking at, the zoning use, where it best fits. And in a growing city, this is a map that everyone has seen and will be familiar with tonight with the public hearings that are before you, that the city is growing. And in order to accommodate that growth, we need to be flexible and we need to have approaches that will not be one size fits all. There is no silver bullet. So the initiative that is before you tonight is something that is creative, but it is something that we firmly believe can work in new and existing neighborhoods. So before you is the zoning categories that we have for residential uses. So the discussion tonight and some of the zoning standards that have been proposed will enable up to 4 units as of right in all residential zones. So what we're looking at is, again, as I mentioned, from the R1A, R1B zone, quite a few RM, R2. They all today allow different levels of density, just different levels of development. And it's important to look at this. So this is sort of the sandbox that we're playing in. So if you look through the stats here, this is the percentage of land that has been developed within each respective zone. And this does exclude zoning that is considered to be inaccessible or restricted due to infrastructure. So you won't see the Vision lands in here. You won't see a big swath of land in Humphreys Brook East in here because that land is essentially, right now, it's locked up pending infrastructure. But it does provide a good indication in terms of where we are with our land supply, specific to the zoning that we have through the zoning bylaw. Looking through here, you'll see this is what the land supply of each zone makes up in terms of the residential zoning in the city. So the baseline zoning that we have in the city is typically R2, which permits up to 2-unit dwellings or a combination of accessory dwelling and a single-unit dwelling. Moving through R3, we're all familiar with, is the multi-unit zone. Then moving down through to the R1A, R2U, R1B, RM that have a mix of, in some cases, only single-family dwellings, all the way up to townhouses, row houses. But this just shows that supply and that split of how much each zone makes up for in terms of our overall residential land supply. Again, looking at the statistics and trying to understand how, from a land supply, from a zoning, from a permit perspective, what is the history on this and what have we been doing in terms of our permits? So as council will be well aware, record years of growth, record years of development, high permit values, high numbers. What that often reflects through is the number of multi-units that we're building. So if you look at the top picture there, the multi-unit apartments, they make up for a substantial part of the overall permit unit numbers that we see in the city, in some cases between 75 and 90% annually. If we look through the other forms, the single family, the duplex, semi-detached, triplex, townhouse, row house, we're really seeing a gap there where a lot of those are not being constructed. And there's often a reasoning for that. Single family units are becoming increasingly expensive. Land supply, existing neighborhoods are already built out. So one of the questions that we asked ourselves was how could we work through zoning tools and through enabling more development to take place in these existing and new neighborhoods in a way that is complementary and not seen as visually derogatory to what exists on the ground today. So again, just sort of highlighting in terms of our semi-detached triplex, we're in the zeros or 1 to 2 units, and we really need, through the Missing Middle initiative, to work on ways that we can increase this type of supply, because this is housing that is typically more affordable, more attainable, especially when you come into the questions of ownership. So this slide shows all of the housing initiatives that the city is currently working on. A lot of these sit with the planning department. And the key message here is that the Missing Middle initiative is not designed to be the one-size-fits-all, the silver bullet that's going to all of a sudden solve our housing problem. Our housing problem is going to be solved through a creative approach. This is just one piece of the puzzle, and something that our team is constantly working on to try and improve, because we know with the record numbers of growth, we need the workforce housing, we need the population growth, we need people in the city to kind of be taking on these roles. Well, and first thing is we need to be able to house them. So in that regard, the City of Moncton Missing Middle initiative, is something that we feel can help contribute to that, but not something certainly that is going to solve the housing crisis in one fell swoop. So this is a video I believe Jim put together with his drone, so you'll have to bear with me. Hopefully it works. But this is looking over the Old West End, and I believe the Old West End is a neighborhood that is looked at fondly, both domestically and looking within the city and abroad. In speaking with Jim, he mentioned that this neighborhood has actually won quite a few awards over the years. And what's interesting is this is probably one of the only neighborhoods that in the city of Moncton that actually has a number of missing middle housing typologies within it. So you walk through a Grandview, you walk down Burlington, Broadview, you'll see a combination of 2, 3, 4 units, single units. I myself live in the neighborhood, and it's one of the things that I really like most about it is you do have that variety in housing stock, and it's not something that we do see in other neighborhoods, with the exception of parts of Sunnybray and the Garden Hill neighborhoods. So this slide will show us the housing continuum and ultimately how we look at housing as a municipality, and this is also something that you will see reflected through CMHC and other, housing-focused bodies. So essentially what we have along that continuum is from the beginning, sort of homelessness, precarious homelessness, couch surfing, all the way through to market ownership, with various stops along the way from transitional housing, subsidized housing, affordable rental, market rental, and affordable ownership. So historically, what we have looked at as a city and what we've looked at in terms of permits and what's come through the door are a combination of market rental and affordable ownership. So over the past few years, we've seen a lot of rentals come up, permitted, high unit number counts. Again, which is great because we did have a deficit of that supply historically to the affordable ownership model. So you saw a few years past more townhouses, more row houses, because that ultimately is what the market would construct, because that's ultimately what the end purchaser could afford. So for context, a small single family home near the Moncton Hospital may have been a level of entry at one point in the city. Now it may be the middle unit of a townhouse. That may be what is now considered attainable or affordable in terms of our housing stock. This initiative that we're exploring tonight sort of sits outside of that, again, trying to attack those gaps picked up through the housing needs assessment, all the various studies that the city has done to look at where we can increase supply between that affordable ownership and market ownership model. So another nice visual that Jim was kind enough to put together for us. It kind of gives us a bit of a conversation point moving through the slides around housing and how we've looked at this and how we've shared this and presented to the public through our multiple engagement sessions that we've had with them. So generally speaking, you'll have a person or two, whether they're a couple, whether or not they go into an ownership model of a home. And for a long time, that was what was affordable. That was what was attainable to Monctonians. Moving through the life of a family, you may see children, you may see young ones growing up, again, working through their housing, hopefully being able to stay within that one house and having it meeting their needs, to the point where maybe students move away, maybe they're going to school, maybe they're going to take a trade, maybe they're living abroad. But what we've seen in a lot of cases, whether anecdotally or through what we've heard through engagement, is a lot of those people tend to come back. So whether it's a grad student looking to come back to Moncton, maybe you've picked up a trade, maybe you're finally ready to kind of enter the professional world, the work world, and there's not really many places for you to go in your neighborhood. There's not very many options in terms of rental. There's not very many options in terms of ownership. Both are quite prohibitive based on our land supply and the cost of housing. So what we've sort of had in terms of having those discussions with the public was saying, well, what would that look like if we were to add a unit and to increase the density in a way that visually is not visually obtrusive, but achieves more housing units, achieves more density in those new and existing areas. And that could be anywhere from a graduate to an elderly person. We hear a lot of people talking about our accessory dwelling unit grant program and how they're moving in their parents, or they may be moving into the smaller unit with their kids coming over to take the larger unit. And in a lot of zones and throughout the city today, this isn't possible. And again, it may even be you're building someone like a Wildcat, or you have a student. There's lots of options. And again, just creating that additional space. And that additional space may just be a bachelor apartment. It may be a 1-bedroom, depending on the size. It may be a 2-bedroom. So again, it's creating that supply and ultimately creating that choice. And the housing choice for residents today is not on par with where it needs to be. And initiatives such as this one will help not only the younger generation, but also older generations as well, who may be looking at the next stages of their housing and wondering where will they live. So I would, in some areas such as the North End, some other neighborhoods where we do have one unit, maybe two, well, where are these people ultimately going to go when it comes time to downsize? The chances are that they're not going to be able to stay in their neighborhoods because the housing choice simply isn't there. And this tool is not saying that this is what will happen, but we're providing the choice for homeowners, for residents, to make that choice whatever best suits their needs. And again, ultimately looking at potentially, like as I mentioned, like the in-laws or the parents are living in a separate unit, because as we know, it can often be tough to accommodate intergenerational housing all under one roof. But if we do have separate units, separate functions, then that creates that opportunity. So in order to look at this initiative from a zoning and a planning perspective, I know this table, it looks pretty basic, but a lot of work went into determining those lot standards, and a lot of questions, a lot of throwing kind of mud at the wall to see what would stick in terms of what will work and what wouldn't work. So we've created zoning standards throughout the bylaw to enable not only 4, but 2 and 3 unit dwellings across all of our residential zones. And I can touch on why we took that approach in a later slide. But again, this is a typical table that you would see towards the end of the zoning bylaw. And in addition to design standards that need to be met and adhered to, we've put together quite a few planning tools that we feel will help us enable density while also retaining character, knowing that that's really what's important to residents and ultimately a question that would come to council. So instead of, I guess, listing in bullet points what those standards are, the team felt we could show visually how you would go about doing this work. And what's very interesting is this, the team at Trace has more essentially mapped out the old West End of Moncton, and we use it for tools to sort of show how it could fit within neighborhoods. So this isn't a street in Toronto or Halifax. This is one of any properties that you may see generally mapped out and designed in the old West End. So if we look through here, again, you'll see a change where there may be a door added to the back. And what that door will enable is a potential unit in the basement or partially under the garage. Again, all subject to design and trying to meet those standards that we're looking at. And working through, again, looking at the streetscape, if we were all to go on a walking tour in the neighborhood and saw this, would we be able to tell that there is more than 1 or 2 dwelling units in this space? The goal for us in planning was always for the answer to be no, in terms of the design, the look, and the feel of the property. So in order to achieve that, again, looking at our lot standards, many of them exist today, but in some cases, knowing that there is a strain on parking and we need to be able to provide a bit more space, we've applied a 40 square meter increase in order to provide more parking on site, and that goes across all of our zones. Looking again here at a 6 meter driveway, I think my ugly mug is sort of blocking that 6 meters, but the width of that driveway is 6 meters, again, enough to pack 2 cars beside each other. So looking again at how this could then be further converted, again, all these applications and these developments would need to meet the building code, is that you, in theory, could have a main dwelling unit with 2 accessory dwelling units or additional dwelling units as part of the overall build. And again, this is what it would look like visually in terms of the development. So shared staircase inside, we're limiting to 2 front entrances facing the street. Again, for that visual need to make sure that it's looking like, for all intents and purposes, a 2-unit dwelling from the streetscape. Another example we have is a pretty standard house that you would see throughout Moncton. Again, sort of showing the development potential of the lot. Again, looking at a unit, in this case, it may be at the ground floor. You can see with the added entrance to the side, the decorative awning, again, making sure that we're providing and meeting our parking space with our lot standards. And again, showing how we could add that potential second unit with keeping the character of the street in mind. And again, as an alternate option, is that if you have a single unit dwelling, that would be the main use of the property, would be the single unit dwelling, is we would allow for up to 2 additional dwelling units, whether they're both internal to the building or potentially added through what is called a garden suite, which is permitted by the zoning bylaw today. So what would that look like visually? Again, you're seeing a connection point here, and from the street, by design, we're looking at a visual that looks no more than 1 to 2 dwelling units from the street. Another example, this would be, I guess I would suggest a more modern build that we see in some of our newer neighborhoods. Again, same sort of picture in terms of being able to provide that unit in the basement, or perhaps it could be an extension off of the back of the house. Again, really emphasizing that we are trying to provide that element of choice to homeowners and to property owners, rather than prescribing to say this is what it shall be. We're giving them the choice up to a degree of what can and cannot happen on a lot. So again, looking through here, you'll see in some cases where in most neighborhoods parking is available on the street. So in this case, you'll see the 6-meter driveway for 2 units. There's a garage and a parking space on the street. Again, which is largely permissive throughout the city, with the exception of those storm warnings that we do get from time to time in terms of parking on the street. This is a 4-unit example. So how this would fit into our, again, looking at an existing neighborhood. You'll see again that 6-meter space, but how we would show the 4 units being achieved. Again, is sort of that 2 entrances to the street, and that ultimately that connection to the sidewalk, if it's there, if not, connection to the street itself. We're looking again at permitting parking in the rear. However, if you were to provide parking in the rear, you must meet the standards for driveway aisles. Again, that's 6 meters, and we would require a fence at a height of 1.5 meters in order to provide screening from adjacent properties. But again, the look and feel of the property from a streetscape perspective is again, it's that 2 front doors. It's not 4 front doors. It's not a mismatch of something that really doesn't fit within the neighborhood. A lot of popularity, and this was the one that I believe we had a lot of positive feedback on in our engagement sessions, was the on a corner lot. So with a corner lot, you do have a bit more permissibility, a bit more ability to work because you're facing 2 streets. So there is an extra component, I guess a bit of a bonus that way, where you can easily accommodate 2 driveways. You just simply have more space fronting a street to implement, again, that 4-unit. So you'll see here, again, with the appearance and the way that the building is designed and would be required through the zoning bylaw, how that can be achieved from a visual perspective. Again, with our 6 meters. This is a new one that it's replicable of a semi-detached dwelling unit that exists today. At this stage, we're not looking to propose this into the R1A or the R1B area because they're typically single-unit dwellings that have 1 driveway. In this case, we felt a semi-detached may not fit within that character because essentially you're taking a smaller lot that, again, that 650 total, 315 square meters each, that would each have a driveway. So we felt that this would fit better within the R2 zone and moving up from there. in terms of an idea. And what it is it's a stacked semi-detached dwelling. So what would be allowed, or what we would be looking at, is essentially a principal dwelling or a single unit dwelling on the top floor with that accessory component. And this is in discussions with colleagues in other municipalities, and just talking generally about the 4-unit initiative, because it is something that many municipalities have taken on, is it is a viable way of home ownership. So today, just for context, I remember being in Moncton in 2010, 2011, a semi-detached house was going for around $110,000, which was at the time an attainable rate that most could afford, especially if you were just on your own or starting in the workforce. And I believe that in the peaks of COVID, those numbers were going up to around $265,000 per unit and climbing $5,000 a day. So it was quite alarming to see, again, the change that we've had in a really short space of time, in about 10 years. So this model, if you think about from the acquisition standpoint, is that someone could, again, have a partner, or they're paying the mortgage on that floor, and then the rent that they would be able to acquire through the lower unit could ultimately help pay that mortgage, and again, create more opportunities for home ownership for those in our city. Again, this is what it would look like from the street, so not all that different from what the current semi-detached units would look like today. So as I mentioned, it would not propose to be permitted in the R1A and R1B neighborhoods today. The average lot size looks smaller because what it is ultimately it's a 660 or lower square meter lot divided into 2 as a semi-detached, which is common throughout the city today. Another example of a semi-detached, this time on a corner lot. Again, just providing that visual of what it can look like from that sidewalk, from that street perspective. If, so for example, you were to live next door to it. Again, showing just how those units are achieved. And again, that visual perspective, if I were to take the dog for a walk around the corner here, I wouldn't be certain that there was more than 2 units in this development. Uh-oh. One item that we have included or proposed is to really look at, when we're looking at our transit numbers, seeing the growth and the rapid development that we're seeing in and around these areas. This map reflects the busy or the more frequent transit routes that we have in the city. So as the bylaw amendments are proposed, a 4-unit or a stacked semi-detached dwelling that fits within this orange area would not be required to provide off-street parking, meaning parking on the site. This would not preclude them from doing that. However, we felt that, again, if you're looking to provide more in lines of student housing and it's located within a transit area where there are bus stops, this is generally within that orange area, there is a bus stop within 400 meters of all of this area here. And again, it's not something that we are saying you cannot provide parking. We're simply just providing the choice to say, if I want to rent this to residents, they know that there is not parking on site. We will provide that flexibility, and it does also create more opportunity for infill housing in and around transit areas, because ultimately, in order to increase ridership and again can continue the positive growth we're seeing, this is a sort of a small step that would ultimately help achieve that in the longer run. And parking is always going to be something that we talk about here at council, and it is a major theme of the municipal plan review. So looking at this and the way that it's designed, it's something that we can look at in working through the municipal plan review, understand how it works and how it does or doesn't work, and something that as a proposed as a small thing, again, it's only for 4 units and those stacked semi-detached, something that we can really monitor and see how well it is or may not be working. We're nearly there, so thanks for bearing with me. Again, so Canadian municipalities and the Housing Accelerator Fund, so this is not unique to Moncton. It's one of many municipalities across the country that have committed to enabling 4 units as of right in all residential zones and enhancing those accessory dwelling units that I covered earlier in my presentation. Regionally, many half-committed municipalities have incorporated or are in the process of adopting their new housing and zoning standards. So within New Brunswick, we're looking at St. John and Fredericton. in other municipalities, Halifax, Summerside, Prince Edward Island, and St. John's have gone through this initiative similar to the journey that we are embarking on together here tonight. And again, this is all tied to the Housing Accelerator Fund. Council is very familiar with this program, around $15.6 million in funding over 4 years that is subject to performance requirements, including meeting these commitments, amongst others. This is one of 9 initiatives that we are currently committed to. A lot of these projects are tied directly to HAF funding outside of this initiative, but the municipal plan, a lot of our staffing and our key infrastructure investments in some of these areas that we're looking to see develop are tied to this funding. Recently announced the Canadian Housing Infrastructure Fund, launched in 2025. Funding is available for municipalities to access infrastructure that creates more housing. The city has a number of projects that are very good qualifiers for this. So, for example, the Vision Lands, Humphreys Brook East, and the St. George Street renewal. They are all projects that are we feel will score highly and be well received. But in order for our funds to, we can submit an application, but in order for those applications to be approved and for that funding to be dispersed, our municipalities must implement the 4 units as of right in all residential zones as a requirement to, as I mentioned, to receive those funds. The city has submitted 1 application to date, with a few more to come through the direct stream. And in the media, you may have seen last week or the week before, the province and the federal government had announced their $150 million program for the provincial stream as well. So there's quite a few dollars that are available. And in order for the city to access a lot of these areas that we have targeted for growth, the timing for this program is really good. However, we do need to kind of meet these commitments in order to access that funding. In terms of public engagement and having conversations with residents, we purposefully kind of spread out our sessions over time. And what we did was 3 public sessions held in the community. So as opposed to having a meeting at City Hall or a virtual discussion, we were at the Crosman Center, we were at the Mapleton Lodge, trying to get out into these neighborhoods and try to encourage neighbors to come in and listen to our approach, take feedback. It was quite interesting. At the first session at the Crosman Center, a number of residents thought we would be actually trying to provide them with housing and that we had units available for them, which was a strong indicator of kind of the housing need that we are currently experiencing. And there was generally support from attendees on the housing intent and rationale. Again, getting to that point of if I grew up in a neighborhood, would I be able to go back there to when I wanted to start working? Could I afford to rent or could I afford to buy? Is there housing for me where I grew up? And in many cases, the answer is no. And on the other end of the I guess, housing life, for those looking to downsize, could they stay in their neighborhood or would they need to move to another part of the city to accommodate their need? Because that's where the apartments are. So really, they were very supportive of the element of choice. Not to say that they didn't have questions around infrastructure, parking, design, all those types of things. But the approach that we took was we developed our standards and used our approach in those conversations with residents and continually updated them and brought more progressive finalized documents as we carried on the conversation. So someone that attended the first session was there from the initial conversation towards the final product. And I feel like they felt like their input was taken in and was considered because we didn't come to them with a final set of plans and say, here it is. We built the standards throughout the conversation with the public. Again, we had a suburban developer focus group. So a lot of our developers that we see building today in these neighborhoods were generally very supportive of the model. And again, it provides them a little bit more flexibility and more density in order to help pay for the expensive infrastructure that they're having to build in with regard to city streets and infrastructure. We had a pretty busy Let's Chat project page, a number of media discussions. So I was always told I had a face for radio, so I was able to go on the radio a few times and try to promote it and try to really get that message out to residents and to anybody who wanted to hear it, that this was something that was being considered, because really we know that we need the buy-in from everyone in order for this to be successful. And as I mentioned before, developing those standards based on conversations and feedback from the public as we progressed through the initiative. In terms of uptake, I think there'll be a lot of questions around what does this mean for my neighborhood? Are we coming in and there are going to be 4 units everywhere? In terms of our analysis and speaking with building inspection and other departments, The 4-unit development is likely to be more prevalent in new and emerging residential growth areas as new construction. As I showed in previous slides, the R1A, R1B, those R2 areas are largely built out. So what we would likely see in those existing residential neighborhoods are more additional dwelling units, whether it's a basement or a building extension, or potentially a garden suite, or a combination of the two, because we're proposing to allow you to have up to 2. But again, the main use of that property is a single unit dwelling, so the property owner would presumably be on site and managing those interactions. Some of the challenges, if I were to decide I wanted to take this on my own property, again, it's ultimately coming down to landowner choice. We're not saying that it shall be 4 units or that you must have additional dwelling units. We're simply providing residents the choice to make the decision in terms of what works best for them. The National Building Code is a tough one. A lot of these dwellings that were constructed predate a lot of code, and it's not so easy to get a 1940 house up to a 2020 standard in terms of the building code. So there are some high costs that are associated with that. And people ultimately have to decide as well if having an additional dwelling unit on their property is for them or not. And what we're moving forward in perspective is if you are choosing to provide more of that gentle density on site, that we have the design standards and the controls in place in order for that to happen in a way that is not detrimental to those existing neighborhoods. So, administration ultimately recommends that Moncton City Council give first reading of the proposed bylaws, being zoning bylaw amendment Z222.47, to refer the bylaws to the Planning Advisory Committee, which is having their monthly meeting on March 26th, which would be next week, and ultimately to set a public hearing for second and third readings on April 22nd, 2025. This concludes my presentation, and I would be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Councillor Edgett, did you wish to move the recommendation?
Yes, I would like to move it. I believe Councillor Leger had his light on first, but
Oh, c'est beau. Merci beaucoup. Merci. So we have a mover and a seconder. Are there questions on this? Donc, Conseiller Butler? Oh, Conseiller Edgett, go ahead, please.
I think.
Okay, here we go. No, I guess it's me. I'll make it brief. Thanks a lot for the presentation and certainly for the effort. I did go to one of the sessions, and certainly there's a lot of there are positive comments, but then there's also a lot of anxiety with respect to what's this going to look like and so on. And I think we've seen that in other jurisdictions as well. So I think a lot of it's going to be in the manageability of what this looks like and the design standards. So a question, though, I would have, and it'll come back, I guess, eventually, is some assurance that in the areas where these projects will be undertaken, that the infrastructure will support the additional housing units, whether that's sewage, water pressures, things along that line. So if that's captured in here, it'll be certainly something to just remind everyone and I guess to help move that process forward.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know in the council report form, we did add some comments from engineering because it did come up. And what we found was that the wastewater capacity is actually ample. And the change that we've seen in family sizes to historic levels, so we're not seeing a family of mom and dad and 4 kids. The family house size unit has gotten quite smaller, almost to the point where it's almost less than 2. So the anticipated usage of those properties, whether or not there's another toilet or not, is likely going to be less. And we did, again, have those questions around servicing and the optics and the design standards. So I think a lot of care and time was put in. So for example, if you were to live in a Centennial Place or an R1A neighborhood, there are no design standards in that neighborhood. But the 4-unit and the stack semi that we're proposing do have design standards in order to keep in with the character of what's there today. Yeah.
Merci, Conseiller Léger. Conseiller Butler. Conseiller. Okay. Conseiller Edgett.
merci beaucoup. Yes, this is second or third time I've seen this presentation, and I find the visual is it helps us to really understand the implementation of this zoning bylaw. We have been talking about this for going on a year now?
Say a year and a half.
Yeah. So I think we're at the point now where it can be very clear for those who want to understand it completely. And the visuals are very good for that. And I think, as you pointed out, it's for certain neighborhoods that you can see this being very appropriate, and other neighborhoods probably not.
Yeah.
But the parameters are there. There's lots of checks and balances. The design is certainly of concern to people, and I think you've got that in control. So I really feel we can move forward with this very in a positive way.
Thank you.
Merci, Conseiller Adjut. Conseiller Butler.
Thank you, Madam. I'm going to call you Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Josh, for the presentation. I've got a lot of issues with it. I got to be honest. As going to the public sessions, you know, a lot of people don't like to speak out, but afterwards they come to the councillors and they talk. And a few of the things that I heard is that, you know, who enforces these building standards? Because we have places in this city right now that people go and they buy a home in a neighborhood and they never live in it. It's just chopped up, it's into a boarding house, you know, and so on. And then we as councillors and even the neighbors are calling in, and they're very upset. They've worked very hard through their lifetime to have a nice home, keep their properties nice, and all of a sudden there's somebody from maybe, I don't know, another province buys this house, chops it into rooms, and the next thing you know, it's the police are getting calls there. I just got a text here a few weeks ago where the police have been called to this house several times. 7 or 8 people living in this house, mostly single males. So again, I would surmise, you know, that it's a boarding house. But when we say this, you know, people all of a sudden start thinking, oh well, we're going to get these really nice garden homes in the back. But you know, another person I spoke to is that the cost to try to recover your costs from one of these, to hook sewage up, to just a building material in this day and age, it's you know, for an older couple, you would never get your money back for doing that. You'd have to sell everything. And then again, we go to a person from out of town, buys it, turns it into rentals. So how do we guarantee, I guess a guarantee is never very good. I bought a new truck and the guarantee was no good on it, but we have to try to make them feel that they're safe in their neighborhoods. And we have a lot of neighborhoods where their seniors live there. And the most important part is the person that was there first, we should make sure that they're looked after. They have a voice here that sometimes is not heard.
Yeah.
So how do we go about that? So in planning, you only have one enforcement. Is that correct?
One enforcement officer today? Yeah, correct. Yeah, yeah.
So in this whole city, and I always say, like my ward, I get a lot of calls. My ward's almost the same size as Dieppe and is bigger than Riverview, and we only have one. I just like to always put that in there, that we live in a big area. I don't know why, but it just seems to come out. So we have to figure out how we can make people, residents that have been paying taxes all through their life and keeping their property nice, and I've been through a few of them, beautiful properties. Then next door, you see beer bottles. Not that there's anything wrong with a beer bottle, you know, but you know, you don't want to see them on your lawn. You don't want to see garbage coming, their dog come over, crapping on it. So go ahead and give me your wisdom.
I would say that the human element is very difficult to contain. And as you mentioned, the rooming houses specifically. So something that has come up, and I know that at our planning staff meetings is something that we typically deal with. The enforcement officer will come through and say through fire prevention, other areas, that they have identified these rooming houses. And rooming houses are a specific use in the zoning bylaw, and they're not permitted in a lot of these areas. So to the point, the idea of having an additional dwelling unit is that it's a separate and contained unit from the single unit dwelling. And the rooming houses, again, if our bylaw inspector, she does great work. She's one person again, but they're going through that work list, working with the fire marshal, working with fire prevention to make sure that those are being dealt with in terms of the enforcement side of the bylaw. But I think what we've tried to do as well, and again, it's all about choice. So it's not necessarily saying that we are going to tell you that you have to have 4 units or that you have to have additional dwelling units. People have to make decisions in terms of what they're going to decide to do. So I agree, if you're going to build a $100,000 garage anyway, and you put a unit above it, then we're saying that we're giving you the choice to do so. If you want to convert your basement into a unit, it has to meet the building code. It's a change of use. We need to have a permit at the City of Moncton to make sure that those codes are being adhered to.
So I guess that's where, excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt, but I think this is where sometimes we work in silos. So the RCMP get calls to places, bylaw gets called to places. So, and then your inspector gets, I don't know why we're not working together. So like if the RCMP go to maybe what we should do is maybe get somebody like Jeff to have a bylaw officer go over, maybe Charles LeBlanc, to go over and explain to them what you're looking for, what you're looking at. So if they get a call to a place where the continuous calls for garbage or noise, it's being a rental area and we don't know, I believe someday that we should have a registration for rentals, especially in suburban areas. I really do. You know, the bylaw and the RCMP go there, they don't know who owns it. You know, it's a numbered company. You know, so it's becoming a money grab. You know, these people, seven men living in one house, you know, really, like, so I think that we have to get on top of that, and that takes that fear away from the residents. So I think that what we should do, if nothing else here tonight, we should try to maybe say before the next meeting, is that we're going to sit down and not in silos, but the policing, the bylaw, and your inspector will come together and maybe have meetings once every couple of weeks and say, we've been to this house on such and such an area, and there's a lot of good activity there we think is a boarding house.
Yeah,
and do that.
And I think, and again, you're not wrong. If it is 7 people living in a house and they're all individuals, it's certainly something that's tough to manage. But I think it also provides a bit of an indication of how tough it is out there to access housing. And again, it's not solving the problem for the neighbor. And again, they're going through the recourse of through the inspection and through the compliance officer. But we can make sure that we need to have a meeting, and maybe it's something we could commit to quarterly, or it's bi-monthly, or whatever it is, to make sure that if it's tackling the issue of the rooming houses specifically, because the rooming houses, they sort of just pop up, right? They put a number on the door and all of a sudden someone's renting it in the bedroom. But with the 4-unit initiative, what we're looking at is actually self-contained units that would be taxed appropriately and then have to have a change of use application that would actually show that these units exist. So they're not as, people can't be as cavalier with them in terms of, it's like, say if you're a sheriff, it's always hard to catch a cowboy, because at the end of the day, there's always going to be that element there where people are going to try to make these things work. But I think we can certainly meet internally with whoever needs to be at the table with bylaw, with compliance, and I can work with Jeff to make sure that we're having that conversation and come forward with a plan, because at the end of the day, if the rooming house issue specifically persists to be an issue, then from an administrative standpoint, we want to make sure that we're firm on the position of what we can do and come to council with that sort of plan as well.
So in closing, I'm going to say this, is that, and you said, yes, I agree that shows that trying to find housing is difficult. But an older couple that is retired and worked their whole life and lives next door to that? Explain that to them.
I don't think that the 4-unit component is necessarily going to exacerbate that issue, but I think in terms of making sure that we're putting the plan and putting the rules in place for people to be good neighbors as much as we can from a zoning and regulatory perspective, is that we need to continue to try to push towards that. So we'll take that on and get back to you on those conversations, but thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Councillor Butler, for expressing those concerns and also for the suggestions with regards to the rooming houses. So thank you so much, and thank you, Josh. So we do have a motion. Excuse-moi. OK. Conseiller Richard.
Merci beaucoup. Merci, Josh. Nice green up here. It's good.
It's actually a map.
You've got them all, I think. So the subject of this was neighborhoods and housing initiative, and you're identifying gaps out of the 2023 housing needs assessment. I'm looking forward to what other, this is filling in a gap I'm looking forward to see what else is going to be coming our way, how creative we can get.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have anything that you can share.
I think we have like some let's call them ideas, but in terms of the municipal plan review, what you're going to see is again that 2-year process that's just gotten underway. We had a really nice meeting with our municipal plan review committee and planning advisory committee, actually in chambers, where our consultant WSP was able to present. From that initiative, one of the core items for us to look at is 10 big moves. So what are like some of the 10 big moves that the city will look at over the next 25 years to implement in order to address needs and what we think the Moncton of 2050 might look like. So I would say, from my personal perspective, that housing is a big one. So as I showed that earlier slide, that it's one of several housing initiatives that we're looking on. So whether it's densifying along corridors where we have transit. So if we were to look at upping the density and in trying to incentivize more development along, say, an Elmwood Drive or a Mountain Road, where the transit is going, and where we have a plan through the transit master plan to look at those types of things. Once those strategies are done, we'll be able to look at those recommendations to find other housing solutions that we feel can work. And realistically, if the city does 1,000 units a year, the multis will still take most of them, but if we're able to add a few of those categories that are showing today as 0, then we're able to kind of, again, try to contribute to that supply, but looking at some other bigger initiatives that may actually be able to have more of a profound impact in terms of creating more density. But to your point, we're going to have to really investigate them, make sure they're vetted, work with engineering, work with all of our colleagues to make sure that it's not just something I throw into the wind and hope someone catches it. It's got to be something that is fact-based, stat-based, and something we can truly support before it would come to council.
Absolutely. Thanks for your insight.
You're welcome.
You brought me into, you used the word incentivize, so I'll go with, what kind of incentives are there for people to go this route?
Well, it's kind of in some ways, it's kind of like putting a horse before the cart, because we need to pass this in order for it to become eligible for incentivization. But again, what could happen is we can work as a team to figure out what type of tools we would have available in order to incentivize something like this. In some areas, as council would know, we have a number of Housing Accelerator Fund grant programs. So if there are some programs that are underperforming, perhaps we can provide funding to that level. Interestingly enough, a number of the health growth areas, so development charges, accessory dwelling unit, a lot of them we are getting towards the cap. So we've spent the full half amount in terms of grant because there is such a demand for the programs. So if it was to be council's desire, and if this is successful in April, we would then be able to be in a position to look at some of the half funding or what tools we have available in order to incentivize this, because it would be great to see a pilot come through and see how that would work out. But that's something that we would talk about if this initiative is successful.
Yeah, no problem. And the reason I'm bringing that up is that with the different dwellings, there's going to be change in their tax.
That's right.
The property tax, right?
That's right.
So whatever help
Yeah,
they
and interestingly enough, on that additional dwelling unit or accessory dwelling unit grant program, we allocated 30 doors, and I believe historically we had done 4 or 5 permitted in the last 5 or 6 years, and we did all 30 in 1 year at $10,000 a door. So it is indicative that there is demand for that type of growth, and for, again, people making choices that want to stay in their homes. Maybe they're moving into a basement unit and the kids are taking over the house, or they're providing housing for students, or they're providing them in a way with that flexibility to make more decisions on their property in terms of how they want to live their day to day. Yeah.
Yep. I was happy to see the vision lands were mentioned in your presentation.
Yep.
Are these property owners reacting to the possibility of the 4 units as of right? Is this going to help them put shovels in the ground sooner?
I believe so. I mean, the big thing would be accessing the infrastructure funding to get the road, the east-west collector built. That's something that all landowners are going to need in order to move. And I believe the last time we checked, that east-west collector was costed out at $65 million. So if we're able to access the federal funding through SHIF, it can provide up to 40% of that project cost, which would then make things very very appealing for the developers. We're not there yet in terms of the rezoning, but what's the base zoning in that area is going to be it would be RM, so residential mix, which would provide up to townhouses, row houses. It already provides that 3 to 4 unit capability. So that would be the new base zoning moving forward. So you're not going to see an R2 and R1 neighborhood. And if they were to get that, and if this initiative is successful, those 4 units could then be constructed. So I believe they would be supportive of it, not only from a zoning perspective, but also for the potential to access infrastructure funds. Because at the end of the day, if we're collecting on 20 million in development charges instead of 65, I would think they would be very happy. Yeah.
Good call.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Merci, Conseiller Richard. We do have a motion that's been moved and seconded.
Yes, by
So-
Edgett and Legier.
On the question,
We're
do
going to
we
get the vote up.
Do we raise our hands?
Nope, you're going to vote
No,
on.
we vote.
There you go.
Okay, c'est bon.
Yes.
Kingston. Okay,
Conseiller
Some-
Bourgeois is not online yet.
comment?
Conseiller Bourgeois is not online
Okay,
yet.
c'est bon. So the motion is, has passed. So, merci à tous. 8-9 vote.
Merci.
The next item is a public hearing, and it's municipal plan amendment for 70 Queensway Drive, and we have received some objections. I see Sarah Anderson making her way to the podium to provide us an update on this.
Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So, do I just touch the screen to move this? No, I swipe. All right. Fens Market is proposing to develop a new commercial lot at 70 Queensway Drive. The development will feature a new gas station, a Denny's restaurant, and a Starbucks. The property is currently zoned highway commercial, which permits the intended commercial uses. However, the property falls outside of the city's urban boundary, meaning that the property doesn't have the right to connect to city's sanitary sewer and water systems. So as a result, this application is the proponent seeking approval to amend Schedule 2 of the municipal plan, which is just to include the project area within that urban boundary to allow it to be connected to services. So the property is located at the corner of Mapleton Road and Queensway Drive. It's located in Ward 4. So historically, these two properties were owned by the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, or DTI, for many years, with the intent that they would be used for future upgrades to the highway system. So for this reason, they were never really included in the urban boundary. However, in 2023, DTI determined that they no longer had need for these parcels of land, and they initiated a land disposition process, where they subsequently, the land was then subsequently acquired by Fens Market in order to develop this proposed commercial node. So once these two parcels are consolidated, the properties will have a total area of 3.5 acres and 275 meters of frontage on Queensway Drive. So as mentioned, the property is already appropriately zoned to accommodate the proposed commercial uses, and no changes to the zoning are required as part of this application. Instead, council is being asked to explore the merits of expanding the urban boundary to include the project area so that it can be serviced by municipal water and sewer. So if the urban boundary amendment is denied, the project may still go forward under the current zoning. However, they would need to be serviced by an on-site well and septic system. So with that being said, here is the site plan that was submitted by the applicant. The main building will include 920 square meters of commercial space that's divided into 3 commercial tenants. There are 2 driveway entrances that are planned off of Queensway Drive to access the lot. The development will feature an 8-pump gas station and 10 electrical vehicle charging stations. Denny's will be a sit-down restaurant, and the Starbucks will have a drive-through component located at the south of the main building and the parking area. So the applicant has submitted some 3D renderings to offer a bit more of a detailed view or illustration of the lot layout. So there's one and there's the other. So to assist council in the decision-making process, the proponent was required to submit 3 studies in support of their application. So the first one was a cost-benefit analysis. So the purpose of this analysis was to determine the cost incurred by the city over a 25-year period and compare this to the expected property tax revenue generated by the development at full build-out. So overall, it was determined that the development will generate approximately $45,368 per year through property taxes. There are no significant costs or new costs anticipated to be taken on by the city. The second study that was submitted was a servicing plan. So overall, it was determined there is sufficient capacity to support the development's water, sanitary, and stormwater management needs. Excess stormwater will be captured through a series of catch basins in the parking lot, as well as a new retention pond located at the southeast corner of the lot next to the Trans-Canada Highway. So finally, a traffic study was also submitted to better understand the increases in traffic volumes as a result of the proposed development and to determine the impacts, if any, the development traffic would have on the adjacent street network. So understandably, it was confirmed that this development will increase traffic volumes within the study area, particularly on the westbound off-ramp ramp near the site. However, the majority of those trips are expected to be pass-by trips. So that means they're anticipated to be mainly vehicles that are already traveling by or near the site on a regular basis and not necessarily new trips that are going to this as a destination. So in other words, drivers will exit the TCH via the westbound and eastbound ramps, make a stop at the development site, and then continue to their original destinations. The study also identified existing operational issues on the Trans-Canada Highway westbound and eastbound ramps. However, it is important to stress that those operational issues are a result of existing conditions and they are not directly related to this development at full build-out. So to improve traffic operations, DTI are planning 2 infrastructure improvements in the area, including one being a roundabout at Mapleton Road and TCH westbound ramp, and an additional turning lane at the TCH eastbound ramp. So you can see that illustrated in the image in front of you. These transportation improvements have been planned for many years, and they are expected to proceed in 2025 based on our most recent conversations with DTI, which I believe were about a week ago. The proposed improvements would greatly improve the performance of both intersections in both AM and PM peak periods. So in terms of a recommendation, it is recommended that Moncton City Council approve the amending municipal plan bylaw Z122.12 and Schedule 2.6, subject to a resolution with conditions that are listed below. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions.
Merci beaucoup, Sarah. So please bear with me. I've never done this before, so I'm supposed to declare this a public hearing, is that correct? And if the developer wants to present, do we have the developer here this evening?
The developer is here, but I think wanted to just answer questions if needed.
So we ask the question of the developer, or I was just going to go through the process.
Sure.
So we would hear from the developer, and we would hear from the proponents, the public, and finally those who object to this project. Is that correct?
Correct.
So you're asking the questions?
So the developer is only here to answer questions if needed? Okay.
Correct.
C'est beau.
So then we would go to anyone who is in favor of the project that would like to speak.
So is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this project?
Okay. Next, I do have 2 objectors who have submitted their names to speak. And the first one is Harley Stackhouse, if you'd like to come to the mic to speak to his objection. Oh. Okay, then Mr. Summers, Mr. George Summers, you can come up and speak, and then Mr. Stackhouse can follow up.
First off, I'm curious on the matter of procedure. Am I allowed to ask the developer a question?
Je n'ai pas compris qu'est-ce qu'il dit. Madame la greffière.
Yes.
Yes, very good. Have you had discussions with the Department of Health and Environment and Infrastructure with respect to having a well drilled on the property?
I haven't personally.
So you're not aware that the aquifilter is contaminated with manganese?
I would not be aware of that, no.
Well, I highly advise that you check into that, as well as the policy of the Department of Health, that if there is access to a municipal well supply, that is the preferred method of access for public access to water. So I ask this question and that council understand this is not an either or, that if you choose not to go ahead with this, that the developer will. The odds that the developer will get those approvals are next to nil. If you do not approve this, the development is highly unlikely to go ahead. Any questions on that? Okay. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor or Deputy Mayor, I'm not sure which, councilors and city staff. My name is George Summers, and I have been a resident of the Mapleton Place subdivision for 23 years. I've been asked to act as a spokesperson to introduce the written objection of the motion to approve the commercial development at 7D Queensway Drive. For those of you who have not had an opportunity to read the written objection, and more particular, an opportunity to read the complete traffic impact study, I'd like to briefly outline the concerns associated with the proposed development. The traffic impact study has not addressed the safety and traffic flow concerns of the residents of the subdivision. That, quite frankly, is a fact. And that's the opinion of the residents of the subdivision. Unfortunately, the study had a very limited scope and, amongst other things, did not answer the following questions. What impact will traffic exiting from the city have on the increase to traffic flow on Queensway Drive? For example, the study stated that there would be no traffic increases from Mapleton traffic exiting the city, going either to the Starbucks or the Denny's restaurant. This simply is not realistic. When queried about this, we were told by city staff that there'd be no need for anybody to go to the Starbucks in this particular development because they would turn off of Mapleton Drive, drive in Trinity, go into the Trinity Superstore, exit their car, go into the Superstore, get their coffee, come back out with their coffee, get in their car, and then proceed back to Mapleton Drive and exit the city, as versus the alternative of simply continuing down Mapleton Drive and going through a drive-through. So obviously that's a flaw, and it's totally unrealistic in the study. Equally, Denny's restaurant will be the first and only Denny's restaurant in the city of Moncton. In fact, it will be the only Denny's restaurant within 100 kilometers east or west of the city. To suspect or to imply that there will be no traffic from the city to that Denny's restaurant, once again, simply is unrealistic, but that is what is in the traffic impact study. What impact will traffic have on Queensway from potential future developments? The details of 3 potential developments have been included in the written submission. Although they are potential, one has previously been approved by PAC, the Planning Advisory Committee. It's currently, I understand, in limbo, but in reality, the switch could turn very quickly, and that could be built on the south side of the TransCanada and the Mapleton Park entrance area. One developer has a posted sign on the west side of the Hampton Inn, indicating there's going to be a construction of a complex to happen soon. And the third is a 180-acre lot on the land that's east of the proposed development that the developer is looking for investors. Now, what's interesting about the last one, that 180 acres is on the far side, the east side of the proposed development. If the proposed development goes ahead, effectively, the entrance to that 180 acres is limited to, you guessed it, coming up Queensway, making a right-hand turn down Cherry Lawn, and then proceeding on, which does 2 things. One, it precludes that there would ever be a commercial-grade highway from McLaughlin to Mapleton. And I suggest this is something that has to be given very serious thought before you plug that corner and forever stop the flow of commercial traffic along the Mapleton and McLaughlin area north of the Trans-Canada. The second thing it does, it increases the traffic flow exponentially on Queensway Drive, which was not included in the traffic impact study. And in addition to increase the traffic flow, there are also safety concerns with respect to the proposal. Queensway is a very narrow, two-way residential street. It was built as a residential street. It can never be widened past 2 lanes at the east end. The street was developed for limited access and entrance to the subdivision and Camper City Trailer Park. What happened in Halifax with the forest fires has the residents concerned that we live in a community that has only one exit. The impact of increased traffic was not evaluated in the study in light of the fact that there was only one egress from the subdivision, Camper City, and the proposed development. Another clear oversight of the traffic impact study. Pedestrian traffic on Queensway was not fully addressed. Why there is not a complete and comprehensive proposal to assure no pedestrian actions occur with the proposed development. That Queensway has no sidewalk and is used for pedestrian traffic, and it concerns us that the sidewalk being proposed is only 2/3 of the length of Queensway. Residents are concerned that due diligence has not been exercised when evaluating the long-term ramifications of this proposed development. We, with all due respect, ask that the proposal not be approved, or at the minimum, it be postponed until such time as a more comprehensive traffic study can be undertaken. And I'd like to point out at the last meeting, there was a question about the cost-benefit analysis having a time horizon of 25 years. And it's important to understand that while the cost-benefit analysis has a 25-year horizon, the traffic impact study has only a 5-year horizon. So the focus was only on a very narrow 5-year for that study, yet 25 for the cost-benefit. The traffic impact study cannot truly look at planned development in such a narrow time horizon of 5 years. We advocate that the time horizon be increased from 5 years to a much more reasonable period of time to ensure that this decision is made with thorough thought. I guess that's really the main points we want to point out. I turn it over to my colleague, and if there's any questions, please fire away.
Thank you, Mr. Summers.
Mr. Stackhouse.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Mayor, Council. I wish I had a time machine. About 25 years ago, I stood here and with our members of Maple Place, and we went through exactly the same situation. The council at the time decided that they actually unanimously would vote in favor of us, and that was good. We jump ahead 25 years. It was a safety feature back then. It's a safety feature now. Since then, we have 2 hotels, another one going up, 2 apartment buildings just to the west of us. Camper City has expanded. There's a subdivision north of us. You get the picture? A lot more traffic. And that's what we're really concerned about. We also feel, as George, to reiterate what George said, eventually there's land on the north side of the Trans-Canada Highway which is being sold or is for sale. We envision the day when Granite Drive will be extended on through McLaughlin right to Mapleton Road. That piece of land of which we speak should in fact be part of that, that highway, if you like. And I guess that's about what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stackhouse. Okay, yeah. Does the developer wish to address the concerns that have been expressed?
I can certainly try. I want to just fully disclose that I haven't had a lot of involvement in the actual development side of things. I'm the operations partner for the company, so more so in the operations of the business, the company. I can answer certainly any questions you guys have about that. In regards to the studies, all I can say is I don't know if they've been completed, the ones you had asked about. They may have been, I'm just not sure. Okay. Yes, and there may have been. Is there any questions I can answer from?
Brian, Councillor Butler, do you wish to speak?
Brian's good. I like that. My mother liked it too. It's for Sarah. You're only into the operations, and I appreciate you being here, and if there's any questions, but Sarah, I remember a few years back when we talked about the water that the Department of Health came to us and asked us to shut down the well up in Mapleton Place because of the water. And we took some heat that time, but we had to shut it down because of health reasons. So I'm not sure if there's been a study on if they could, I think it was Mr. Summers that said about the water issue there. So I think that's very important. Now, I've been away and on holidays. As you can see, I got a lovely tan. Thank you very much. It's a good Irish day to come back, St. Paddy's Day. But I think there's a lot of issues here, and I have to agree with the traffic up there. It's terrible now. And while I was driving back from Halifax today, I noticed that a lot of the exits off of Trans-Canada where there was maybe a Tim Hortons or something like that, there was tractor trailers didn't want to go all the way in, so they would park on the side of the exits and then get out and walk over. So I'm thinking that, I think it was, again, Mr. Summers or whoever stated about the fact of a traffic study. Would it be so terrible for us to answer these concerns for the citizens? Is it possible to put this off so we can get a few more answers done in regards to traffic?
I might ask Renee, like I say, from the Director of Engineering to maybe respond to some of those comments.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Butler. As you're aware, any major development, we require a traffic impact study, and which is, what we're required here. So there's some of these concerns that I will have to agree with, in the sense that this site, especially being a restaurant that's new in town, will attract additional traffic. I, for one, don't live in the area, and probably my kids will ask me to go and drive them there, so proven case. However, the major traffic concern was already identified by the NBDTI here, being the interchange of TCH at Mapleton. So the improvements that we're seeing on these plans that are proposed for 2025, the roundabout, the new signalized intersection, the widening with the additional lanes, that has been taken into a broader traffic impact study that looked at an even greater catchment area than this localized development. So if we ask for another traffic impact study for this development, that is definitely something that council can address or can decide. However, I can guarantee you there wouldn't be any additional improvements coming out of that revised traffic impact study, because again, the major infrastructure improvements are being proposed in 2025 by the province of New Brunswick.
But again, it was pointed out, and and this is new knowledge to me, regards to the possibility of more development in that area with that 180 acres and some other construction going to happen, or it could happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would be appropriate for council to just take a step back and maybe ask your department to maybe suggest that we do another study, taking into account if that does develop, because we just had Josh up here talking about the lack of housing. So if we have 180 acres that can be developed, and we have money to put into that, we have to. It's certainly going to affect the traffic in that area.
Yeah,
I'm not saying there's anything on your desk right now, but I think that Mr. Summers made a very valid point, is that we do a study that how much money we're going to receive in taxes over 25 years, while we don't say, well, here's 180 acres that could be developed, but what's the traffic going to be like in 10 years instead of 5 years? And I don't know if you can look into a crystal ball and say that in a traffic study, but I think that it's at least possible to look at it to say, well, there is this possibility. So I myself personally, why I'm saying this, I don't want to put the developer in a bad spot neither, but I think that there's questions here that have to be answered because there's enough citizens here that are concerned. So I think as an elected official that looks after all of these people, not my ward, but I know a lot of them over the years. And even if I didn't know them, I think it's still appropriate for us to be able to wait to get these answers. I'm not saying that you have to get a whole new traffic study done, but I think that we have to listen to their concerns of what they said here tonight, possibly 180 acres being developed, and seeing where that goes. And also, if we hook up to that through the urban boundary, then do we change the urban boundary that 180 acres can be developed? There's a lot of things that can happen if we go ahead with this and say, okay, you can hook up. Because now we've changed that urban boundary again. So where do we stop with that urban boundary? Now, if somebody comes farther out Mapleton Road and say, well, listen, I've got 50 acres out here, I'd like to do something. So where does it stop? So I think myself personally, I'd like to put a pause on this to see if we can come back with, to try to make these citizens feel a little bit more comfortable if we do or we don't, at least with traffic. That seems like the biggest concern. Because I can tell you, when Mr. Stackhouse talked, when I came to Moncton in 1979, I bought a building lot in Mapleton Place. And then I got married. My wife said, I'm not going to live out there because at that time we had to cross over to TransCanada, and she was scared to death. So things have changed a lot, but there's still a lot of traffic out there. So anyway, I would like, I don't know what council feels like, but I would like to see this maybe, I don't know, table it till we get some information back.
And it's a fair comment, and if I can respond to that, and it goes back to our process for traffic impact studies, and two keywords: crystal balls. Really, we don't have a crystal ball when we do traffic impact studies. So our process is to look at the vacant lots. If they have proposed and approved development, they'll be integrated in a traffic impact study. And why we do that is because we see a lot of proposals at the city that never come to actual development. Secondly, we have to be mindful that any future development will have its own requirement for traffic impact study. So in a sense, it's not really fair for a current development to include all the catchment area for potential development that may or may not happen. So that's why we're trying to stay close to our process and fair to our process. If we, again, and I'm going to come back to the fact that the traffic impact study for the provincial project included a larger area because that was mandated, because we're looking at talking about an interchange, not just a one development on a lot, so a greater area. So if there is development in the future in the 180-acre lot that you're mentioning, Councillor Butler, that particular requirement from the developer, from that development would be another traffic impact study. So again, we cannot impose, per our process, a current development to look at other areas that may or may not develop. And so I just want to make that clear.
Yeah, and I understand that, but also, Rennie, you know, when you talked, you spoke there, you talked about the developer a lot, but we haven't talked about the residents, and I think they're here too, and they've got to be listened to.
For sure.
And I'm not saying that it's got to be put off forever, but they have some concerns, and I'd really like for somebody from your office or planning to sit down with a few of them to find out what their concerns are, seriously look at them, and then bring it back. And we got to make them feel at ease. These are the people who are going to be there for another, 25, 30 years. Well, some of them won't, but I won't be neither. So what I'm saying is that we have to try to make them feel safe also. And it's a two-headed coin. We want to make sure that developer develops the area, but we also got to make sure that the citizens feel like they're safe. So I would like to table this to the next meeting, regular meeting, and for staff to bring back after a conversation with, one-on-one with the residents of how they feel and how we can correct as council.
Thank you so much, Councillor Butler. You're really putting the pressure on me tonight. I've never
But you're
done
doing a
this
great
before.
job.
This is wonderful. No,
Great job.
Postpone the public hearing. Is this what you are
Yes.
requesting?
Yes.
Okay, and I need a seconder. So Conseiller Richard, you're seconding this, so, and the motion is not debatable.
No.
So, thank you. Est-ce qu'il faut voter? So on the motion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion, électronique, excusez-moi. Okay, so we vote this way. Okay. So, Conseiller Radje, do you have a question?
Yeah, it's supposed to come up here.
It's not debatable.
Yeah, we're not supposed to. Just questions. No.
If it is not debatable, if a motion to postpone is not debatable, so
We're not really supposed to even have a motion.
We're on the amendment, we're not
Yeah.
on the motion.
there's a motion to postpone until April 7th. That is not debatable. It will come back on the 7th with,
I understand that, but what
go ahead.
what's on your screen here,
Yeah, we shouldn't be voting.
we shouldn't be voting online,
Yes.
on electronic, we should be doing, because we're on the amendment, right?
yeah, but we're going to, it'll automatically be the postponement. That's what will be in the decision of councils tomorrow would be the postponement, not that we're passing the public hearing, okay? Okay.
Am I allowed to speak?
Oh. Can we take a?
Oui, vas-y.
Okay, so I guess.
We need a mic on. We need a mic.
But the decision is postponed.
Yeah, we need a mic on. There you go, Nick.
Yeah, sorry, just from a process perspective, there's a motion on the floor to postpone. That'll be voted on. If that passes, the public hearing remains open. It's postponed for further information. Bring it back to the next meeting and continue the discussion. Kind of, picking up where we left off tonight.
Yes.
Could we ask two questions about the postponement?
Go ahead, Sarah.
Just one, not to be too into the process, but typically we have to submit things 2 weeks before the meeting, so we will not have enough opportunity to do all of the things that we need to do and bring it back for the April 7th. So could we just postpone it until it is ready? I'm not sure what the wording you could use, but.
So, Mr. Butler, Councillor Butler, how do you want to proceed?
Yeah, I think, I agree that we need some more information. I would thought that maybe that I was giving you information or giving you enough time to sit down with the group. I think Mr. Summers was the spokesperson and a couple of more, and to find out what their really concerns are about traffic. And they don't, listening to them tonight, they don't feel like we have brought forward enough information to make them feel confident that there won't be a traffic issue. What I'm asking you in postponement is to meet with these people, find out what their real concerns are, and if you need time, take the time, get it done, and then come back. So we'll make sure we get it done and done right, as we always do.
And just wanted to add something. It seems that one of the main concern and requests is to do a revised traffic impact study with some of the points that were brought up. I just want to clarify if that's one of the requests, because the developer hired a consultant for that, and we would ask the developer to redo some of the traffic impact analysis. It's not something that we would take on internally. We would like the consultant who was hired by the developer to do so. I just wanted to clarify that, because we did receive a lot of the written concerns. It seems to be related to the traffic impact study.
Yes, and I agree. But also, you had stated that the provincial government had done a traffic, wasn't it? Didn't the provincial government also do a traffic impact study in that area?
Correct, as part of their, as part of the project for the
They just done it for that.
Yes.
Exactly, for the roundabout.
Yes.
Right? So, I mean, so there's information that the province done, the developer done. Maybe even we put them together and we sit down and speak to the people in that area. Maybe that will be enough. But if it's not, then what we maybe have to do is to ask the developer to do a further study of what is going to be in 10 years. I don't know what their concerns are, but, you know, they are concerned about the traffic. So come back when you have information.
Okay.
Sorry, and I just want to make another comment. I'm not sure if this is appropriate at this time. For the 180 acres to the east that was discussed quite a bit tonight, it is our assumption that that land, it's all right now zoned, I think it's RR1, so rural residential. There's a really good chance that that land will not develop in that way. So a rezoning will be required. And at that point, any further rezoning that will increase residential density in this area will very likely trigger a second way out. And so the concern over, you know, this one developer considering the future development of lands around it, that is something to, we've been meeting with the fire department quite a few times on this area, and that was always the message, that future residential development or density, right now people have certain rights, but if they want more density, that will trigger the second access. So that, including that 180 acres to the east.
So I guess my original statement was when you get the information, so we feel more comfortable and the citizens feel more comfortable that we can come back and we can debate it again.
Sure.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Is staff comfortable with this? I'm totally lost right now. So, from a procedural perspective, so where do we go, Monsieur Robichaud?
Well, we have the motion made here. It's not a debatable motion, so really it should be voted on now.
Donc,
Whomever hasn't cast their vote, if they could cast their vote, please. Councillor Butler, Councillor Bourgeois, online. Conseiller Bourgeois. Conseiller Bourgeois, peux-tu faire ton vote, s'il vous plaît?
Could be having difficulty.
Okay.
Madame la Greffière, it does not indicate whether we have yes or no. Where?
There you go. 2 nay votes, Susan Edgett and Monique Leblanc. And there was not a vote cast by Councillor Bourgeois, just for the record.
Thank you, Madame la Greffière. So the motion is passed. Thank you.
Conseiller Bourgeois.
Too late now. Pass.
Okay. The next is another public hearing, and it is rezoning application at 358 Ryan Street, and there were objections received. I see that Sarah is once again here to bring us through this one.
All right. Good afternoon again, everyone. I'll just wait just a moment.
Est-ce que les gens qui étaient dans la salle sont contents? C'est quoi?
Oui.
Go ahead, Sarah.
All right.
Thank you for your patience.
Pardon me?
Thank you for your patience.
My pleasure. All right, so this is another rezoning application, and this is an application to rezone 358 Ryan Street from RM, residential mix, to R3, multiple unit dwelling. The purpose of this rezoning application is to accommodate a 3-story, 47-unit apartment building. So the property is located in the city's north end, and it is in Ward 3. So as some of you may remember, this property already went through a similar process in 2024 when it was rezoned to RM, or residential mix, to allow for a 24-unit townhouse. Since receiving that approval, the developer has cited unforeseen economic challenges, including rising material and labor costs, which have all made the project unfeasible due to the high construction costs per unit, and then the corresponding costs or increase in rent that would have to be asked. So instead, at this time, the applicants are requesting to upzone the land from RM to R3 to build an apartment building where each unit will have a smaller footprint than the townhouse model, making it cheaper to construct on a per unit basis and therefore making it more feasible to offer at a reasonable rate. So here is the site plan that was submitted by the applicant. So the development proposal includes 47 residential units that consist mainly of studio, 1- and 2-bedroom units. The development will provide more density on the site with the addition of 23 units compared to the original townhouse plan. But at the same time, the footprint will be reduced to 23.1% lot coverage. So that's a decrease of at least 10% from that original townhouse design. The parking plans include 75 surface parking spaces, representing a parking ratio of 1.6 spaces per unit. The parking plan has also accounted for 16 long-term secure bike lockers that will be offered to tenants, as well as an outdoor bike rack near the main entrance for guests arriving by bike. So a key consideration for this development through the review process was to create a building form that presented an appropriate and an attractive face to the street. This can be particularly challenging when you have a sort of narrow and deep lot that prevents the building from being parallel to the street. So it is felt that this has been achieved by locating the primary entrance in front of the building and accenting it through articulation in the building design and the high-quality building material. From a planning perspective, the north end of the city is generally characterized as a low-density suburb that features mainly single and 2-unit dwellings. While these types of housing, they definitely meet the need of many Monktonians, there is a growing need to introduce more housing varieties, such as apartment buildings, to these neighborhoods. This is important for 2 reasons. 1, it provides a housing option for people that are interested in moving to this neighborhood, and 2, for those looking to downsize while continuing to stay in their community. So it is felt that this particular development and this particular design meets those needs and would integrate well in this neighborhood, being on Ryan Street, which is a collector road. So in terms of the recommendation is that Moncton City Council rescind the resolution pertaining to 358 Ryan Street that was adopted on February 20th, 2024, and approve the zoning bylaw amendment being bylaw Z222.42 and Schedule A42 for 358 Ryan Street, subject to a resolution with conditions including but not limited to the conditions that are listed below. And that is my presentation. Happy to
Thank
answer
you,
questions.
Sarah. Is the developer here, and would he
Yes.
like to speak on the project?
I think they just wanted to answer questions, unless you wanted to present anything. Okay. Answer questions.
C'est beau. Merci. Are there objections or other proponents who wish to speak in favor of the project? So, don't. Anyone objecting? No? Donc, for the members of council, donc le conseil. Are there questions from council? Conseiller Butler.
Thank you, Sarah, for the presentation. I promise it won't be really hard on you this time. We do have one objection from Mr. Mercier. Is he here? I don't think so. So when we talked about with Josh regards to the 4 doors, that it's better than, especially money-wise, it fits into the neighborhood and all of that. This kind of doesn't fit into that kind of thinking as far as the 4 doors. I realize that there's a cost. The cost changes, especially now with the guy that has a tan all year round with the tariffs. But I'm just wondering, with this, it was supposed to be townhouses before, wasn't it?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and that was kind of like going with the rapid funding from the federal government also, that's what they were looking for in areas, the four doors?
I'm not sure. I do know when I read, I believe the applicants did submit their financial model, I guess, to you. It was submitted with the package. And from what I understand, they did apply, one of the goals of the company is to provide affordable housing, not deeply affordable necessarily, but an affordable living arrangement for normal people. When they did the costing for the townhouses, they submitted that to CMHC, which typically does the 10% affordable housing. CMHC denied them because they said the rent that you will have to pay is too high, that any funding we give you will not actually turn into affordable housing. And so they wouldn't be allowed to get, they were denied that. So I'm not sure which funding stream you're referring to, but
That was the one.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I asked at the last meeting with this is regards to when we rezone this, that they can put an apartment building, we talk about, people coming all the time, and we had one at the corner of, right across from Northrop Fry. It was residential, and we changed it to an apartment building, and nothing's been built there, right? Now it's up for sale. So when we change this from one zoning to another, does it increase the price of that property? Is that property more expensive now if somebody wanted to sell it? Like, I'm just concerned because, we have a lot of buildings that people get the zoning changed, but nothing is built. But as soon as we change the zoning, sometimes the cost goes up or the price of that piece of property goes up. So I'm just kind of wondering, not debating that the gentleman is not upfront with us or anything, that's what he's trying to do. But I'm just saying, overall in this city, we get a lot of this. And, and I know especially in Ward 3. So I'm just kind of wondering if we could get a price on that, or maybe the owner knows what that is?
I did want to mention as well, just before, that typically when land is rezoned, the reason why we go through this process and get a site plan, there is usually a condition that it has to be in general or substantial conformance with the plan submitted. So although the land may be rezoned, it comes with a design, it comes with a site plan that whoever buys it, that's what they have to do. So
I agree. I agree. Yeah, but townhousing, building townhouses, if you know it's not affordable to build them.
Right.
And you say, okay, now I got it rezoned, I'll sell it because I don't want to do an apartment building. So that's all I'm asking.
Hi, my name is Bilo Diallo. So in terms of market value of a townhouse lot compared to an apartment building, we had one apartment building that we're starting in the next coming days. We're just waiting for the permit. So the townhouses, usually it's a little bit than the double than an apartment building. So in terms of market value, basically it end up losing a little bit on the market value.
So your land is worth less?
Yes.
Fair enough. Well, that's a good answer.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Councillor Léger.
Thank you. I guess I'm a little concerned, not so much with the proposed development. My concern is the type of housing that we've been approving over the last 2 or 3 years. And we're going down, we continually are replicating the same thing. We're doing 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. And what was nice about the townhouse development is we saw it in the previous proposal when we were talking about the missing middle, is we're not seeing development of townhouses. We're not seeing single-family homes being built. We're just seeing the same thing being replicated. And to me, I'm certainly not opposed to what's presented before us, except for the fact that it's not what we approved in 2024. And I think that that is, for me, very important, because we go through a lot of thought process to rezone something. We take it very seriously. And I guess perhaps it's just my expectation. My expectation is when a developer comes forward with a townhouse development, they have things in place. They have their financing in place. They have everything in place. And 9 times out of 10, perhaps that's the reason why some of the developments fall through, because we don't. And maybe we don't ask, and we need to ask. So all of a sudden now we flip and we are presented with another apartment unit. Now, you are going to include 33% I saw, of affordable housing based on the CMHC definition. But even then, that's, although it's, I guess, high and the percentages are one thing, but I looked at the rents. So you have, and I'm not against the proposal, but I just want to sort of highlight some of the things. We talk about affordable housing. So we'll have 20 units that'll be at $1,600 a month, or let's say close to $1,700 a month. We have another 12 that'll be probably close to that as well. And then in total, we'll have 9 at $1,200, 1 at $1,000, and then we'll have 5 that'll vary between $800 and $1,000. We're chipping away, but it's not really. I guess what I'm concerned about is I don't feel that we're achieving our plan. And maybe, Sarah, you have more insight in terms of how do we saw it in the missing middle. We saw all of the units that are being built all over the place. But that's only one type of housing. And if we turn our backs on, something like a townhouse development, then what's the signal that we're sending, right? And so perhaps there's nothing we can do with this one. Maybe it's a fait accompli, and the rest of the council will decide on whether or not this is better than nothing. But moving forward, if anything, is how do we get some type of assurances where if we're going to go through the process of rezoning something, that those things are in place. Otherwise, we're wasting everyone's time. Maybe give me some insight, please.
Insight into the future is hard, but I think, in my experience, having been here for almost 11 years, I've seen the market go up and down and up and down. Right now, we're seeing a lot of apartments being built because that's what's selling. That's what developers can affordably build to rent. I do expect to see at some point that will probably dip, that eventually we will have enough of that type of housing that it will become affordable again because people will want townhouses. From what I've learned through this, to build townhouses now, even on one site, bulk sort of economies of scale, being able to build everything at once, it's not affordable. The rent is $3,000 a month. So to me, I think we need to get to a point where the more affordable units are sort of saturated, and then we can get back to that other types that developers can actually build, knowing that people are around and available and able to rent them.
But here's the catch. If I look at the cost analysis, so to construct a townhouse is approximately $270,000. Okay?
Yeah.
So if you built a townhouse $270,000 and you make an average profit on it, you could sell townhouses. What we have is we have a model that nobody wants to sell anything. We're just going to build townhouses and we're just simply going to rent. And that's the flaw in this. And that's where, as a municipality, we need to figure ways to incentivize whether it's developers that really want to truly make that availability of ownership for people. You know, when you look at it, even if it's, $300,000, it's a far cry from, what we're seeing in terms of a small bungalow at $350,000 type thing and so on. Anyway, I just put that out there. It's a disappointment. I think in the future maybe we can't, but we should. By the time we're looking at rezoning, it should be, and we've talked about that. We used to have a 1 year. It was a 1 year. If you didn't have shovels in the ground at the end of the year, you basically had to come back. The rezoning was done. But for efficiency's sake and so on, we decided we weren't going to do that. Maybe we need to bring it back. There's a sense of urgency, and so anyway, those are just my comments because of a disappointment of seeing something like this, and then it comes back, and I thought I would share them. Thank you.
Thank you. Merci, conseiller Légère. Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres personnes qui veulent parler? Ou... Anyone else who would like to speak?
Kingston.
Conseiller Kingston.
Thank you, Madame Maris, and thank you for the presentation, Sarah, and the developers here too. And I guess I'm a little sympathetic to the construction costs and the increased labor. It's a market, as you said, Sarah, that's up and down. And the CRF tells me that, it's a revised set of plans. Apartment buildings are not permitted under the current RM zoning. Administration's recommending the property be rezoned, to R3, multiple unit, to accommodate the proposed development. I'm certainly in favor of it. It's not quite what happened in 2024, but there are factors that we are not in control of that affect these developments. So I think it's great that we could work within the parameter. Is it the solution to the housing and market? No, but it's a step forward. And I think those rents are affordable, and they will move in that complex. So I therefore support that. I just wanted to mention that in the CRF information. So thank you very much. Merci, Madame Mattis.
Merci, conseiller Kingston. I will now declare the public hearing closed. So, a motion.
We need a mover and a seconder.
So I need a mover and a seconder for the motion, please. Conseiller Kingston and Conseiller Richard. Are there any questions? Any more further questions? No? So on the question, all those in favor signify. Elect. Press the button, please. So the motion.
Conseiller Bourgeois, peux-tu faire ton vote, s'il vous plaît? Or did he go away? Oh, merci. There you go.
So the motion passes. One nay vote. Merci. Madame la greffière.
Oui. Next is the final public hearing. It's a rezoning application for 195-225 Leopold Bello Drive, and we have some objections at this one, and I see Sarah is here once again.
Good evening again. So yes, this is another rezoning application on Leopold F Bello Drive. So plans are being prepared to construct a new mixed-use development on Leopold F Bello Drive. At full build-out, the development will feature 366 residential units and 373 square meters of commercial space that's distributed through 4 apartment buildings. The property is currently zoned both ID, integrated development, and R3, multiple unit dwelling, which permits both apartment buildings and the commercial component. However, given the scale of the development on the lot to be rezoned, administration are recommending that the entirety of the subject lot be rezoned to ID for continuity purposes. A smaller portion of the lot to the north is being rezoned to P2, or open space and conservation, and that's to recognize the location of a watercourse and a wetland and its protected buffer. So if the rezoning is approved, here are the changes that are being proposed to the existing zoning. So on the left is the existing zoning where you see the R3, which is the purple on the bottom, and the ID, which is the pink, I guess, to the top. So this application will basically turn both lots pink. And then you see the amount of land that's being rezoned to conservation at the top, which is the green hatched land. So the subject properties form part of Halls Creek Village. It's a large area that was master planned and approved by council in 2012, and this is located in Ward 4. So this is the currently approved master plan for the subject lands. So historically, the purpose of the Halls Creek Master Plan was to provide for a range of mixed-use development with a range of housing types and different densities. Leopold F Bello Drive, which is the main east-west collector, serves as the dividing line between the lower density part of the neighborhood that features single and two units as well as townhouses on the south side of the street. Meanwhile, the higher density apartments were always envisioned on the north side of Leopold F Bello Drive. The properties in question are located on the north side of Leopold F Bello Drive and are circled in red. So when this was approved in 2012, the vision for these lands was to accommodate 168 residential units and 1,487 square meters of commercial space distributed through 6 main buildings. The height for any buildings on the lands were not permitted to be more than 20 meters, which is a standard 6 stories. So that is currently what is permitted on the land today. So in terms of the site plan, the new owners are proposing to modify that original plan by constructing a mixed-use development that consists of only 4 apartment buildings. Given the current need for housing, the development focuses more on residential, especially given its close proximity to so many schools. The building height is staying consistent with what is currently permitted on the lands, which is 6 stories, and the buildings include a combination of both underground and at-grade parking. However, the idea of a mixed-use development is still important, so the first 2 buildings will also feature small commercial components measuring a minimum of 2,000 square feet or 186 square meters in each of the buildings directly abutting Leopold F Bello Drive. The commercial spaces will allow the development to offer a range of commercial services, including, for example, office space, personal service shops like a hair and nail salons, restaurants or cafes, a small medical clinic, an educational use or a daycare, to name a few, just on the main floor of just those 2 buildings. So the development is scheduled to take place in 2 phases. Phase 1 will include 215 residential units and 373 square meters of commercial space distributed through buildings A and B as shown on the site plan. This will allow slightly more density on the site with the addition of 47 more residential units than the currently approved plans from 2012. However, the revised proposal reduces the amount of commercial space by 1,114 square meters to a minimum of 373 square meters. So phase 2 will include buildings C and D, which are not in pink in the map in front of us. Those are located at the rear of the property. Administration are recommending that these buildings only be permitted to move forward once the full connection between Leopold F Bello Drive and the Vision Lands West is completed to help with vehicle circulation and congestion in the area. So currently, Leopold F Bello Drive ends in a temporary turnaround with plans to eventually extend the road network to the Vision's Lands West to provide the neighborhood with that second access. Administration have been working with consultants to develop a draft road network for the Vision Lands. However, none of those roads have been assented to at this time, nor are there any timelines to share for their construction. They are still being discussed. But in order for phase 2 of this application to proceed, we are asking that a second access be provided to the Halls Creek subdivision. This has been communicated with the applicant, who understands and accepts the arrangement. So these are some preliminary renderings of what the first 2 buildings will look like. This would be phase 1. There's the other one. So in terms of a recommendation, it is that Moncton City Council approve the zoning bylaw amendment, being bylaw Z 22243 and Schedule A43 for 195 to 225 Leopold F Bello Drive, subject to the owner entering into a conditional zoning agreement with the City of Moncton, and that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to sign and seal said agreement and any documentation related thereto. And that is the end of my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Sarah. So is the applicant or the developer here this evening, and would they want to address council at this time? No?
Just answer questions.
Okay, c'est beau. Anyone else who supports the project who would like to speak? No? So any objectors who would like to speak?
Deputy Mayor, I have one registered applicant is Matthew Ferguson. Is Mr. Ferguson here? Oh, would you like to speak to your objection?
Yeah, I'll just do it quickly because I don't recognize.
Come to the mic, please.
Is there any chance we can go back to that photo? Is it 11? Can we put that up? That'd be fantastic. That one, yeah. I'm opposed to this whole project here. What these pictures don't show you is the houses across the street, which I live in and many other neighbors. We proposed, there's a lot of issues, parking in the winter. I can go on and on, but I'll try to keep this short as possible. My biggest concern about more apartment buildings is we already have 2 on this street. A third one is being built as we speak. Plus, there's 2 more just 1.3 kilometers up the road. So as we were talking earlier about more apartments being built, why are we doing that? Josh said that we need more single-family homes. This is a perfect opportunity to build single-family homes. We're destroying it by building massive apartment buildings in wetlands. There's opportunities there, and we're destroying them by building more and more apartment buildings. One of my biggest issues is I have a daughter. We put up a 6-story building. Where that school bus is, or that bus there, that's where my house is. So now I have 6 stories of apartments looking at my daughter's bedroom. Like, we've asked the developer to push back the apartment buildings, leave 10 feet of woods, then have the apartments. There's been nothing. So I'm opposed to this, and I can go on forever, but I'll leave it be at that, but thank you.
Merci. Is the other objector, does he wish to speak? Allez-y, s'il vous plaît.
Deputy Mayor, Council. My name is Ricky. I live on Leopold Bello, so I'm just going to read this quickly, and then I get some specific questions, but we can elaborate as we go. My wife and I chose to live in this neighborhood because we were attracted to the green spaces and the vision outlined in the 2012 master plan. Before acquiring our R1B lot in the new subdivision, we naturally were concerned about the potential impact on our property value. We were assured at that time there would not be a driveway directly across from our house, and I live on 244 Leopold Bello. And then there will also be a huge buffer, minimum 40 to 60 feet zone between the pedestrian or the pathway and the developer. As the PID in question was already zoned at RU2. So this brings me to one of my questions. When was it changed from RU2 to R3? So I'll go down quickly to the question number 2 that I have, we have issues with is the entry exit across from our driveway. Buffer zone again, power line clarification, traffic, snow removal, and also fire issue as far as, I guess the Halifax fire brings back some questions. Our neighborhood deserves A development that respects its established character, maintains safety for our children, and ensures that residents do not feel engulfed by an intrusive city center environment. It is concerning that despite over a year of deliberation with urban planning, community engagement was limited to just a few weeks before the public hearing. Adjustments are far more challenging to implement at a later stage of design comparing to early phases. I do understand the need of new doors and the benefits of densification and integrated development. However, I believe several amendments are required to be looked at. I urge you to consider these points carefully before approving any changes to zoning. I can go into a little bit more detail in the questions. My first one is zoning from RU2 to R3. Nobody knows. I reached out to the city. Nobody can answer me what happened there.
Merci. So, Sarah, do you wish to address that concern about the zoning?
I can one by one, or you can?
Yeah.
Okay. Just to the question of when MU2 became R3. So in 2014, we did similar to what we're doing now with the municipal plan review. At that time, we had MU2 and MU3. But in 2014, they were merged into one, which was R3. The municipal plan review followed the Community Planning Act requirements. It took about 2 years. There were several public consultation sessions on the entire review and the changes being proposed. But that is what happened at that time.
Thank you, Sarah. Does the proponent wish to address the concerns of the citizens? Do you wish to speak? No? Okay, c'est beau. Thank you. No.
Sorry, I've not done.
Oh, allez-y. Je m'excuse.
So, should we have been notified of the zoning changes back in 2014?
We can do all of this at once, or I can.
I'm going to stay here for. It's up to you.
Okay. Okay. So in 2014, what typically would have happened, there would have been newspaper articles, there would have been website notices. These days, there's more things available, there's more pop-ups, people go out. There would have been in-person public information sessions, that sort of thing. Roundtable discussions, those are pretty standard public consultation tools, I guess. So that's what would have happened in 2014.
So how many parcels would have been rezoned at that time? Like, since we live across the street, only meters away, shouldn't we have got a letter in the mail?
So, we're not going to get into a debate, so je ne sais pas comment vous voulez. Monsieur le gérant, vous pouvez peut-être intervenir.
I guess I'm looking to you, Nick.
So typically during a public hearing, the proponents or objectors can make their statements, they can ask questions. Usually we would kind of listen to their entire statements and then administration could respond, or the developer if they were directed to the developer. So that might be an easier way to kind of go about this.
C'est parfait. Donc, on peut conclure. Vous avez les réponses que vous vouliez, c'est ça?
No.
No, you're not. Okay. Well, maybe these issues can be resolved, Sarah.
I mean, I can answer that one right now.
Comment?
Then you can continue.
Il peut demander ses questions.
Okay. So, how many more questions do you have?
For 4.
You have 4 more. Go ahead.
So I guess my ask is, if we don't have an answer, can we postpone this rezoning vote? Question number 2 is exit entry. We're particularly concerned about the design of the entry-exit plan to line up directly across single-unit homes, specifically 208 to 244. The alignment will increase noise pollution, vehicle acceleration, and car headlights flashing into residents' home, all hours significantly affecting those living in the immediate vicinity. Frankly, I found this very, very disrespectful to put a huge building in front of nice houses. we request that the entry be relocated in accordance to the 2012 master plan, ideally across from Park Place Lane, or combining entries with already 171, 181 Leopold Bello, where the apartments already exist. Question 2, buffer zone and green foliage. We ask that the council consider design includes low density, increased underground parking, and an improved buffer zone between the development and the existing residential areas, and increased green frontage with preserved mature trees would help maintain a clear boundary and reduce the in-your-face building. It doesn't blend, period. We request an increase in setback between the new structure and existing pedestrian path and residential area, ensuring a more harmonious transition. Power line clarification. And the power route needs to be addressed to protect the neighborhood's integrity. Currently, there are no power lines along Leopold Bello, all underground lighting below Park Place. Existing homeowners have incurred additional costs to ensure the neighborhood remains clean with a higher end appeal. Do we have an assurance that power lines will remain underground or behind buildings with these new apartments? Number 5, traffic and safety removal or snow removal plans. Apartment residents and visitors are already parking on no parking zone, especially during snow clearing. Some stay for days. What measures will be implemented to address anticipated traffic increases, ensure safety and efficient snow removal? And number 6 was the fire hazard and only one exit.
Merci beaucoup. On va passer aux membres du conseil. Donc, conseiller Richard.
Okay, merci beaucoup. I have a question on the process. I'm wondering if the objectors, the emails that we all saw, were they responded to with, so, like, I mean, Mr. Cormier's coming to the podium asking all these questions. Did he get any answers?
No, he did not. It has been something we've gone over a number of times. I'm not sure if you looked at the dates, we got a number of objections in one day, on Thursday afternoon. We have, in the past, scrambled to try to address all of the questions that are being asked. We typically get more questions in return. It was sort of a no-win situation, and so it was determined a while ago that we should save everything for this so that other people have the benefit of hearing the answers or seeing the answers to these questions.
Okay, so we come to a public hearing, and this is where
The questions would get
questions get answered,
Yep.
potentially.
Sure, yep.
And then council has to make that decision. No, I mean, we talked about a while ago and not having the debate, but without having all the proper answers in advance, you're gonna come up with some answers for them. No disrespect.
No.
And, but that process doesn't really, I don't find that process works. They're not getting the information. We're not getting the information to make a good decision on this. I have a question on the 2012 plan. Was there, I guess I would ask the objectors if there was any benefit to that plan versus what's showing up today in our hearing, public hearing.
Does somebody have the attachment that I sent? The original master plan with the green.
We had it on the screen a while ago.
No.
No?
Wasn't on there.
Okay, so the 2012.
No.
All of that would be in your packages,
Yeah.
council. All councilors have received the package.
Right, so I was just wondering if there was any benefit to, how much of a difference it made to the residents in the area? See if
the vision is totally
move ahead.
The vision is totally different. I mean, I can't show this to everybody. I can pass it to you guys, if there's that an option.
That's okay, we all received it.
This one here
I think so. Seen so many.
would have been an attachment to city council email.
But that being said, I guess my question is, would the residents feel better with that?
100%. It was planned. When we
That's how the
purchased
plan-
our lot, we knew what was going in there. We knew what it was going to look like.
Yeah, it sounds like a major difference. I would ask can I ask the,
helping with the rezoning, overall construction management. So yeah, I can answer on some of the details, obviously. So the first one is, right now, it's, like you know, it's zone R3 and ID. So we could make small changes like to the plans, similar to this, and it could be approved without being rezoned. Just obviously the city wants a bit more cleaner, so they want to rezone everything to ID. But with these two zone, it permits apartment buildings of that magnitude, and we're respecting all the setbacks and all the bylaws required for those two zonings. For the entrances, so from the prior approved development, already some changes have been made. So 171 and 181 Leopold Bello. So the main entrance to that was supposed to be a cul-de-sac. That portion of the land has already been released from the city to Killam Properties for that entrance. And also there was a road right-of-way, and that got released as well. So that limited the access to that lot. So right now, we're limited to the frontage of the lot. We looked at the Park Place entrance as well. And then in the traffic study, it stated that in either direction, if we move that entrance back and forth, you wouldn't see properly on either. So it would be like a low visibility of coming out, either in or out. So those are for the entrances. NB Power, so for the power lines. So obviously that lot needs to be fed. There's plans for that too. So yeah, the power line would be coming down that street, feeding the lot. Then after that, it would be all background fed. What else? The other questions? Oh, yeah. So for the setbacks, we're obviously limited with the wetland in the far back. So we got Overdale to do a wetland study. So there's wetland in the back. So we kept the project in the front so that, yeah, we didn't encroach in the wetland. So we're limited. We can't really push back the project. We already looked at it. We had to actually shrink down the magnitude of the project from 410 unit to 366 to accommodate that. And also the city wanted like a trail tying to future development out back. There's going to be, anyway, a proposed trails and stuff system. And to tie that back with the grades and all that, we had to shrink the magnitude of the project. What else? The snow removal, yeah. For snow removal, so obviously for snow removal plans, yeah, like typically you would so the parking ratio is 1.35, which is still above the other developments that are there. So it's above what's required too. And typically, like for a snow removal plan, it's just clearing the laneway, getting the cars to just as they go to work and all that, then they would get cleared as it goes, so during the day. So as they leave, the snow removal company would come multiple times during the day to make sure the clearing process is done appropriately, so.
Yeah, from what I've seen,
yeah,
during snow removal, they're parking on the side of the street, and it's very congested right now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I know like the other two development, it was an ongoing issue. That's why we made sure to have the more parking space and more room for snow removal on this property.
Right. I appreciate your comments and answers. Sarah, I don't find that the objectors had enough time to, they didn't get their responses. They have to come in here to get some responses. Plus, if there would be a chance for the developer to go back to the drawing board, see if we can make it look somewhat like it did in the other plan, I would move to, again, to the amendment, and I'm looking for it. It's spinning in my computer here. Yeah, the amendment of application to be postponed for additional information and get some more information to the residents, the objectors, and give a chance to the developer to maybe relook at this.
Were there any questions that we didn't answer? I guess that would be my question.
I had to, so from the emails that we got,
Yep.
it's so small, right? So I
mean,
no, that's okay. I'm just saying that I put together almost 10 pages
Yes.
of comments from them. I highlighted stuff in red that one of the objectors actually hit on most of the, and without the answers, I don't feel, I wish we could get some more information and make a better decision.
I mean, I did come with the table as well, with responses to all of their questions. I was prepared to answer them, as I said, at the public hearing. So I could do that if that helps.
Thank you, Sarah. Merci, Conseiller Richard. I believe Madame Larche is here as well. I'm sorry we did not see you, so if you wish to speak, you're one of the objectors, is that correct?
Not on record, but I'll go on record now that I'd like to be one of the objectors. Yes, I frequent that area all the time, and I would like to support what Monsieur Cormier had said. And I'd like to know how the process is of the objections and his questions today. Like the setbacks. If he's asking for setbacks, how does that work? And in terms of the, for me, that's another concern, is the fire, not the fire exit, but the extra road to get out. That wasn't clear to me when the discussion was happening. When is that going to be put in? But all of the questions that he was asking, the setbacks, the different driveways, is that something that can be discussed and modified and changed so that everybody is happy?
So I guess in terms of the question of the setbacks, yes, it could be modified. It hasn't been approved yet. At this time, the currently approved design has setbacks of 4.5 meters. They are staying consistent with what is currently approved on that lot. The lot currently approves or permits 6-story buildings. And if you were to look at the approved site plan that was approved in 2012, at least two buildings are located abutting right at the sidewalk at the 4.5 meter setback. So those types of design, those elements of the design they've remained consistent with what is currently permitted on the lot today. Could they be pushed back? I mean, technically they could. The buildable footprint has been shrunk because a good portion of the land to the north was an identified wetland, and there's the 30-meter setback from the watercourse. So the buildable amount of land has been shrunk for that reason. But again, the proposed design hasn't been approved yet, so that is something that if it could work in terms of the number of units, kind of going back to that financial analysis of whether or not it would work for the size of the land and the amount of parking that's needed and that sort of thing. In terms of the second access, so right now, as I mentioned, there are currently development rights on that lot. Currently, that development is proposed to go forward with 166 units as of right. No rezoning is required, no additional traffic study, nothing else is required. They are permitted to do that right now. Through this proposal, they are proposing more density, but we have stopped it at phase 2, between phase 1 and phase 2. So phase 1 gets a little bit more than that 166 units, but it's also substantially decreasing the amount of commercial space that is currently permitted on the lot. So that commercial space typically would probably have more traffic. I guess I won't get into that, but there is a traffic component to commercial as well as residential. So the proposed design increases residential, but substantially decreases commercial. And they're not permitted to go forward with the rest of the design, the two other buildings, until that second access is provided. So that second access would be Leopold Bello Drive is constructed and connects with either Morton Avenue or Crawley Farm Road. That provides that second access. That could take a while. It's hard to say at this time. Those roads haven't been determined yet, those exact locations, but they are in the works. But either way, those two apartments will not go forward until then.
Thank you, Sarah. Conseiller Léger.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Sarah. Maybe some clarification. When this started to move forward with the triggering of these buildings, is there anything posted on the property indicating what the composite drawings are and so on?
So typically, until a formal application is made, resident private or development proposals on private land is confidential. We can't share it. Things change all the time throughout the design process.
Okay.
Once they've made the application, yes, it gets posted on the website, notice gets mailed out to all the residents, and the sign gets posted.
So the signage is similar to what we did, for example, at Von Harvey and Main Street, where residents were able to see what the proposal looked like and had a 3-month time frame to be able to ask questions and so on?
It's not typically 3 months. Typically, because it is, as I mentioned, confidential information, council would be the first folks to see it. So after it gets introduced to council, when you do that first reading at that first introductory meeting, at that point, if council decides to see it go through the process, then 2 days later, we are required to send out the notice, but not until that time.
And so would this have respected the same time frame as, I use that example, Von Harvey and Maine?
Yes, it's the same rate. It's mandated by the Community Planning Act.
Okay.
I believe in that case, the file maybe was tabled for a little bit of extra time, but either way, the public notice requirements are followed. They're the same for all of our rezoning, and we follow the Community Planning Act.
Not having been there when the sign was put up, I mean, I find it a bit strange because when we put the sign up at Von Harvey, there was plenty of time for people to oppose and so on. At least it appeared that way, Sarah. And quite frankly, I know that this is, I mean, it comes very quickly. I can in some ways understand residents, though, because they look at planning that was done in 2012. Yes, the municipal plan review in 2014 changed the zoning, but there's a certain expectation nonetheless that we would, and maybe we're not clear enough on those expectations, because the plans for 2012 that are stated and shown seem to be more acceptable than what is currently being proposed. And then we also have the as of right, what could be built. I'm wondering, sort of trying to sort of back up and say, how do we create a win-win scenario here? You know, I mean, whenever we face this all the time. I mean, there's change, and the green space that you were looking at is going to change. I think if we can create a buffer, I use Von Harvey in Maine as an example. That was a 10-story building. It became a 6-story building, right? And it was to try to find some type of compromise with the neighborhood. And so I don't know what the as-is would look like. You know, I would ask the developer and say, look, you know, is there any chance to pause and sort of maybe, because everyone wants to win. Nobody wants to build somebody that people hate, that people are not approve of, and then everybody gets angry. And that's what we were trying to avoid at Von Harvey and Maine. And I think we did that. It doesn't mean everybody's happy, but the majority were happy. So is there a way to perhaps pause this for a month, as Councillor Richard had mentioned, and then have an opportunity to discuss with residents and figure out what's going on? I don't know what happened with what seemed to be where the road would be versus where it is now, and what lands were now no longer in play. And I'm not you kind of lost me on that one, just trying to understand. But if you could fill in the blanks, I mean, there is a commitment to develop the vision lands. There's a commitment to create some continuity. And I think it's just a matter of trying to figure out how we can do that and learn from, it sounds like the 2 apartment buildings on the street that's not going well with snow removal and so on. And that's something that maybe staff need to look at on a separate note, because they're, obviously very concerned about that, concerned with the new development. Fortunately, the developer of this new development has been forward in saying, you know what, we want to address that. We realize that's an issue, and we don't want to be painted with the same brush. So, I leave it to Councillor Richard to suggest the postponement. But I think if we had a month, then we can kind of go back and say, okay, let's see if we can create something that's win-win for everybody.
Merci, Conseiller Léger. So, Conseiller Richard.
Yeah, I'd like to move the amendment application be postponed for additional information to the residents. Also give some time to the developer to maybe relook
C'est beau.
situation.
Merci, Conseiller Richard. Do we have a seconder, Conseiller Léger?
Je pense que
So,
qu'il veut dire quelque chose.
Yeah.
excuse, oui, allez-y.
My name is Keith Costello. I live on Leopold Bello, directly across from this apartment building. I know we can't stop development, and we shouldn't, but I'm a bit of a contrarian in some ways. We have Phase 1, which is the buildings 1 and 2, so, and then we have Phase 2, which is buildings 3 and 4. Is there any option, maybe, if it'd be better for right now, just to flip it around, do buildings 3, 4, there are more in the back? We can bring in the electrical system, which is more sort of acceptable to us, and then buildings 1 and 2 would come in again when the roads come in. It would give you the same number of apartments, give you more retail space, and then the option of time would be there for how you're going to site buildings 1 and 2, based on the fact that these buildings are now further back. So I'm just saying the difference is the same, but it would be perhaps would give me more option of time than for what to satisfy us. One of the things we're concerned about, I know Ricky and I.
Monsieur Costello, please use the microphone.
Okay.
We have translation.
One of the other considerations that we don't like is that here we got a high-end development where we are. Now, we've got homes. They're not $350,000. These homes. Okay. I got a house across the street. It's $800,000 is its value. Okay. If I had to replace this house today, it's $1 million. Okay. And all my associates there, they have homes that are $650,000, $700,000, and the way the tax increases are going, they're all going to be pretty soon $800,000 to $1 million. Okay. So we're putting these. It's not, in some ways, we feel like we're disrespected, okay? We have developers just come in and they can just go, okay, we can put a building in here, whatever height is restricted to, and we can put the minimum setback, and that's adequate, okay? And so what, And what we want to do is maintain some of the characteristics of the neighborhood that we have. For instance, we have powerful...
Mr. Costello, I'm going to refer to our legal advisor. So, Monsieur Robichaud, s'il vous plaît.
Merci. Sorry to cut you off, but we do have a motion to postpone. That's not debatable. The discussion should really stop, and council should vote now.
C'est beau. So thank you.
Okay, well, hopefully my considerations will be somewhat addressed in the
Appreciate
future.
it. Merci,
Okay.
Monsieur Costello. So we have a motion on the table, and it's not debatable, so to postpone. Donc, on vote, c'est ça, là?
Once again, this will reflect in the decisions of council that this has been postponed. Councillor Kingston, could you vote, please?
C'est beau, so it's unanimous, 9-9. Merci. Madame la greffière.
Next is statements by members of council, les exposés des membres du conseil. Are there any this evening? Councillor Butler.
It's me again. Didn't recognize the voice, huh? I've been away so long that now I got to make up for all the time I left. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank everybody. Everybody on this day, March 17th, is always Irish, as much as that some people would not say so. And an old Irish proverb is hopefully you're a half an hour in heaven before the devil knows you're dead. So with the Irish jokes done, which didn't get too much applause, I must say, I guess I just didn't have that moment. So while I was away getting this great tan, I was still being advised of the smell in the North End. And through the mayor, through to the CAO, I was looking at my count on my emails, and I see back in May of last year, there was supposed to be something put on the committee for the tri-community with a meeting regards to the three communities working on the smell in the North End. We as a council have voted unanimously in a motion that passed to say that either put it inside or move it. That was almost 2 years ago. There was nothing in the budget this year. And now that the spring comes and now we get the southwest winds, the smell is back. And we have asked over and over for staff to try to come up with some type of a plan. We have appointed 2 new people to the Transaqua board. When they were being discussed to be on the board, the mayor at the time stated that I should call them, and I did. And they said that they would go up, and even talk to some of the residents up there regards to the smell. So now we are probably about the 5th or 6th year that this has been going on. These people are sending in complaints to that form. They never get any word back. They don't get no word back from us of what we're going to do. So I would hope and ask that the CAO would supply the council with a written report so I can share with the residents of Ward 3 what we as a council have done and what staff has done, so we're at this point. So now we're in again, over and over, and now we're back at this point again of the year when the spring comes, humidity high, temperature's changing, and the smell is going bad. So I'll leave that in your capable hands. Thank you.
Merci, Conseiller Butler. Anyone else?
Oh, I was just going to respond to Councillor Butler. Thank you for the question, Councillor. I know that we had the same reports late last week. We've reached into Transaqua and we're getting some answers. We will provide in writing an update on all that's occurred since the last year from the motion and the conversations that we've continued to have with Transaqua and so on. So we'll have a written report in the coming weeks.
Merci, Monsieur le Gérant. Madame la Greffière.
Next are reports and recommendations from committees and private meetings et rapports et recommandations des comités et réunions à huis clos. The first is Committee of the Whole recommendations from February 24th, 2025. Moncton City Council, that is Committee of the Whole of February 24th, 2025, is recommending the following: that prior to any future substantial Kodiak Regional Policing Authority budget requests that include further staffing increases being proposed, the CRPA will provide Moncton City Council with a comprehensive data analysis of how the 2025 approved staffing increases have impacted key performance indicators mutually agreed by the CRPA and the tri-communities, so that any request for additional staffing increase can be evaluated based on such data. And furthermore, that the municipalities request that the CRPA adhere to the budget submission timelines included in the CRPA budget policy number G407, specifically that initial budget submissions shall be brought forward to the Executive Insight Committee no later than 6 months prior to the budget year.
Merci, Madame la greffière. Conseiller Lejar, do you wish to move the recommendation? Merci. And Conseiller Edgett, you wish to second it? Donc, c'est beau. Questions, Conseiller Kingston.
No, I was seconding, sorry.
OK, c'est beau. Any questions? Non. Oh, Conseiller Bourgeois.
Conseiller Bourgeois.
Oui.
Excellent. Je n'ai pas pu assister à cette rencontre-là avec le CRPA. J'ai une petite question. Est-ce que parmi les indicateurs de rendement, les key performance indicators, est-ce que ça comprend le taux de criminalité et le taux de sévérité du crime?
Qui peut répondre à la question? Merci, Daniel. Jacques, c'est beau.
Thank you, Your Worship, Conseil Bourgeois. L'intention, c'est de travailler avec le CRPA, puis de développer ces Key Performance Indicators, puis les présenter au Conseil pour démontrer le progrès fait avec les ressources additionnelles.
Non, je comprends la logique. Je veux juste savoir, ça compromet n'importe quoi comme Key Performance Indicator. Est-ce qu'ils sont présentés au Conseil lors de cette rencontre de comité finie?
Et l'intention, c'est de faire encore plus de travail et de développer d'autres indicateurs qui vont démontrer plus si que les ressources additionnelles ont aidé ces ressources. Donc, il y a certains indicateurs comme le taux de criminalité ou le Crime Severity Index, c'est certainement un, mais on veut en ajouter d'autres qui vont aider avec l'évaluation des ressources additionnelles.
C'est bon, c'est ça qui était ma question. Tu viens juste de dire, donc oui, le Crime Severity Index et le taux de criminalité sont parmi ces indicateurs?
Oui, c'est un indicateur que le CRPA utilise toujours.
Parfait, c'était ma question. Merci beaucoup, Jacques. Merci, Madame la Maire.
Merci, Conseiller Bourgeois, et merci infiniment, Jacques. Merci beaucoup. Donc, on a une proposition qui a été appuyée. Could we have the vote on the motion, please? On va là-dessus, là?
Conseiller Bourgeois, on pourrait-tu avoir votre vote? Allez-y.
Ça me fait plaisir de voter, mais on ne permet pas de voter. Ça fait moi, je vais voter oui.
OK, merci beaucoup.
Merci, so it's unanimous.
No,
Merci.
there's
No,
one
c'est
Butler,
qui?
Councillor Butler.
Ah.
As a nay vote.
Sorry, Conseiller Butler, didn't see that. Okay, so one nay vote.
Yes.
Madame la greffière.
The next is recommendations from the private meeting of Moncton City Council of March 10th, 2025. Moncton City Council at its private meeting of March 10th, 2025 reports that the agenda for the private meeting of March 10th, 2025 was adopted and recommends the following: that Moncton City Council authorize the City of Moncton to enter into an agreement of purchase and sale with J&S Lumber Company Limited for the acquisition of PID 00616193, located within the Turtle Creek Watershed Protected Area for the sum of $100,000 plus applicable HST, and that Moncton City Council to further authorize the City of Moncton to enter into an agreement in purchase of sale with the estate of Hubert Sobeck for the acquisition of PID 00616649, also located within the Turtle Creek Watershed Protected Area, for the listing price of $60,000 inclusive of HST, and that the mayor and the city clerk be authorized to execute all documents necessary to complete the purchase transactions and to affix the corporate seal of the City of Moncton thereto. The background on this is the above land acquisitions are consistent with the City of Moncton's ongoing efforts to protect the Turtle Creek watershed area.
Merci, Madame la greffière. So do I have a mover and a seconder? Donc, conseiller Crossman, merci beaucoup. And seconded, conseiller Kingston, merci. On the question, all those in favor, signify. Oh, yeah, oui. C'est beau, merci. So we have 8 and...
Yes,
Councillor
Councillor Butler was absent for the vote.
C'est beau. Thank you. Merci.
Now I gotta find where I am. Sorry. The next is a resolution to establish a council committee on multiculturalism, and it's Councillor Bourgeois' motion that was postponed February 3rd. We have Angelique Reddy here to provide us a background on administration's findings. She has a PowerPoint, and once that happens, Conseiller Bourgeois, you can speak to your motion.
Bonsoir, Angélique.
The large sign that says push button. Merci. Alors, mairesse adjointe, membre du conseil, directeur municipal. So I was asked to come this evening to present on what the City of Moncton is currently doing in terms of administration, both internally and externally. So I have a few items to share with you this evening. I'd also like to highlight that many of my colleagues helped contribute to this presentation. So in immigration, we have Rachel Slip and Luc Babineau. We have the chair of our DEI committee, which is Kelly Nagel. We have Joanne Duguay, so our cultural officer, as well as Shelley, our city clerk, Shelley Morton, and Vincent Marola also contributed to this presentation as well from social inclusion. So in terms of the purpose, it is to review current actions that the city is taking to become more inclusive and to provide some alternative recommendations. So we believe that diversity in all of its forms is a core value of the city and of the community, and we are committed to being an inclusive and welcoming city for all. It's an important note as well that it's much more of a journey than it is just a snapshot in time as well. So we're working towards all of these different points. So in terms of internal, the City of Moncton currently has a DEI, so Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion internal committee. We have a policy that was brought to Council in October 2022, and we had requested at that time that Council adopt that policy. We also have an internal working group that has an action plan. We are well underway implementing that action plan now within the city, and we have members from a wide variety of different departments that are representative on that committee. We also have 3 working groups as well that help implement that action plan, and they are awareness and education, employment and recruitment, and systemic and structural equity. We have chairs on each of those, and for instance, one of them is here today, which is Keisha from Legal. We also are working towards, in terms of more external, with also some internal components as well. If you remember, in November 2022, Dr. Manju Varma, the former Commissioner on Systemic Racism, had brought forward some recommendations during her time working with the province, or for the province. She looked at our services across the city to make sure that they were basically from an anti-racism lens, and had made 23 recommendations to the city. And so more recently, we've gone through the process of identifying what's been done to date, what's in progress, and what still needs to be accomplished. And we have worked with Ivan Okello on that action plan, and that is now currently complete very recently. And a wide variety of different departments will be working to implement that, as well as the more external components. It will be social inclusion. And so that's in terms of the Commissioner's report. In terms of public engagement, The communications department is really leading the charge in a lot of that, and different departments as well, designing engagement activities to ensure that they are inclusive, and then also working with consultants as well to ensure that what they're doing is inclusive in nature and making sure that they're reaching out to the community to get diverse voices. There's also, as you know, using Let's Chat and looking at different data such as the Immigration Trends Report and other reports that help identify key neighborhoods and areas to work towards. In terms of agency boards and commissions, we have currently 15 council committees, as you know, and 7 external boards and commissions, and the city clerk's office is implementing new processes and training. And more recently, on the City of Moncton's website, there is a new self-identification section where individuals from diverse backgrounds can self-identify, and with the goal that the city would be working towards 50% gender diverse and 30% underrepresented groups. So making sure that as much as possible, our boards, commissions, and committees are representative of the community that we serve. In terms of social inclusion committee, there is a new governance structure, as I'm sure you're all aware, that was approved by council on March 18th, 2024. And there is a new committee that has been formed, and there are 7 working groups, ad hoc working groups underneath that committee working towards the social inclusion plan. Also, from a cultural board perspective, that board is about 50% made up of ethnocultural associations from the Greater Moncton area. There's about 25 in our community, and the cultural plan's well underway, and it goes until 2026. And following that, there'll be the development of a new cultural plan for the City of Moncton. In terms of immigration, where we've seen a lot of more newcomers and international students coming to our community, the City of Moncton, with our partners, have implemented 2 successful immigration strategies, and the City of Moncton is currently the host of the Local Immigration Partnership, and really that's a multi-stakeholder partnership representative of Moncton, Riverview, and Dieppe, 3 levels of government, as well as post-secondary institutions, settlement services like Meg, McAfee, Moncton Cares, OLA, and many other organizations. And one of the main goals of the Local Immigration Partnership is to implement the Greater Moncton Immigration Strategy, and this upcoming year they'll be working on a new strategy, whereas that one is currently complete. Underneath the Local Immigration Partnership, there is a council and there's 4 working groups. All of them are consisting of different members of the community, including businesses as well as immigrants themselves. And there's also a Francophone committee and Comité de veille sur l'immigration francophone as well to ensure our linguistic balance. And so when it comes to some of the work that the city's currently been doing, as I said, it's certainly a journey both internally and externally. And so rather than the recommendation that was put forth, staff are recommending some alternatives, should council wish, that Moncton City Council direct administration to request that the Local Immigration Partnership Council, which is a federally funded initiative, form a newcomer advisory group. This would be somewhat similar to the motion, but would be for Greater Moncton. And this newcomer advisory group could help inform the upcoming immigration strategy. It is a model that has been adopted in many other communities across Canada. So for instance, when our staff were looking at different local immigration partnerships in New Brunswick, for instance, Fredericton and St. John both have a newcomer advisory group, but the Greater Moncton area doesn't, for instance. So that could be a model that the LIP, that we request that the LIP take on. The administrative continue to encourage the participation of members of equity-deserving communities in the public appointment process. So that's to ensure that we continue to work towards the 50-30 guidelines to make sure that all of our boards and committees are diverse and representative of the communities that we serve, and newcomers' voices would obviously be paramount in those committees. And then also to ensure that the public engagement process include underrepresented groups such as newcomers. So as we're engaging in the community, making sure that we're getting out there and meeting more with ethnocultural associations, settlement services, and things like that as we undergo any types of projects as we move forward. Yes. Thank you.
Merci Angélique et merci aussi à toute l'équipe qui a travaillé avec toi sur ce projet. Merci beaucoup. Monsieur le gérant.
Merci, Madame la Maire Adjointe. At this point, we do have a recommendation. The recommendation is a notice of motion. So at this point, we'd like to ask, or if you could ask Conseiller Bourgeois to kind of speak to his recommendation.
Conseiller Bourgeois, est-ce que vous êtes là? Conseiller Bourgeois?
Oui.
Oui, est-ce que vous voulez nous faire part de vos commentaires sur...
Oui. Merci. Merci Angélique. Merci à l'équipe d'avoir présenté une alternative. C'est bien gentil. On met souvent le personnel dans l'embarras à cause de la section 15 de réagir à des résolutions du Conseil qui s'avèrent vraiment de nature politique plutôt que de nature administrative. Mais ça, c'est l'ancien régime qui a insisté sur section 15. Je ne cesse de répéter à qui veut l'entendre que la section 15 doit disparaître parce que, d'une part, ça retarde les choses de façon inutile. Le personnel nous soumet de la documentation le vendredi. On doit prendre une décision le lundi, puis parfois ça cause un problème, comme qu'on avait avec les deux cas de rezonage. Là, on n'a pas toute l'information, etc. Mais c'est comme ça que ça fonctionne. Mais le problème, c'est que les conseillers ne peuvent pas faire des résolutions, des choses comme ça, 2, 3. Le réunion même, il faut qu'on donne une notice, il faut qu'on avertisse les personnes qui étaient au pouvoir que ça s'en vient. En tout cas, on est rendu quelques semaines plus tard à débattre. C'est à peu près la même recommandation qu'on avait entendue du personnel auparavant. Et au moins le Conseil, maintenant, on a vraiment à choisir entre deux approches. Puis la question qu'on doit se poser, c'est comment est-ce qu'on consulte, comment est-ce qu'on implique, comment qu'on engage les nouveaux arrivants qui arrivent à Moncton, puis on arrive en nous, on 10, 15, 20 000 depuis 3 ans, puis il va probablement en avoir d'autres aussi. Comment est-ce qu'on leur donne un mécanisme pour qu'ils s'expriment au Conseil pour partager leurs préoccupations? Comment est-ce qu'ils font pour se regrouper entre eux, entre elles, pour adresser les services et les programmes de la ville de Moncton? Je ne parle pas de qu'est-ce qui se passe ailleurs au pays ou quelque chose comme ça, mais de la ville de Moncton. Est-ce que le conseil de la ville de Moncton, d'abord, veut consulter ce monde-là ou pas? Et si oui, quelle est la meilleure? C'est certainement pas la recommandation du personnel. C'est certainement pas de passer au travers des comités internes de diversité, équité et inclusion. C'est pas en travers du comité de l'inclusion sociale qui a 16 piliers, dont un sur les 16, c'est les nouveaux arrivants. Donc, c'est pour ça, à la demande de plusieurs nouveaux arrivants, que moi, je l'ai arrivé avec une recommandation, une résolution pour établir un mécanisme, puis nous, les mécanismes, c'est les comités, un comité qui serait fait par et pour les nouveaux arrivants, donc composé exclusivement de nouveaux arrivants, discutant de sujets spécifiquement pour les nouveaux arrivants, pas nouveaux arrivants sur 16 piliers, sur les groupes des aînés, sur quoi d'autre, mais des choses qui sont vraiment spécifiques aux nouveaux arrivants. Alors, je me pose une question. J'ai lu le document du personnel, c'est très bien fait, c'est très bien préparé pour offrir une alternative bureaucratique. Mais cette alternative bureaucratique-là, je ne sais pas qui l'a tenté, peut-être est-ce que ça va donner aux nouveaux arrivants, ce mécanisme-là, en travers du PIL, l'autorité de faire des recommandations par et pour seulement des nouveaux arrivants à la ville de Moncton sur seuls les services et les programmes de la ville de Moncton selon eux?
La question est pour, et c'est pour qui, conseiller Bourgeois, là? Au personnel?
Le gérant, après ça, peut pointer à quelqu'un d'autre.
Parfait. Donc, Monsieur Gérant, merci.
Merci pour la question. Je pense que, à la réponse à ta question, je pense pas que, d'après la recommandation pour l'inclure dans le LIP, le Local Immigration Partnership, que ça donnerait des avis directs au Conseil pour la ville de Moncton, parce que ça serait vraiment pour la grande région du Sud-Est.
Ben, exact. Alors, c'est contraire donc à ce que je propose. Merci pour la réponse directe. J'apprécie énormément, M. Gérard. Alors, le Conseil a essentiellement à se prononcer entre deux options. Une, c'est plus ou moins garder le statu quo parmi les organismes qui existent déjà et peut-être essayer d'encourager un petit peu de considération sur les dossiers des nouveaux habitants. Ou mon alternative, qui est d'établir un comité, de nommer, comme avait recommandé Mandro Varma, il y a 2 ans et demi maintenant, je pense, nommer des membres, des nouveaux arrivants sur ce comité-là. Et après ça, de les faire réfléchir et donner leurs conseils sur ce que la ville de Moncton pourrait faire pour améliorer l'accueil, l'intégration, peut-être le recrutement. Je ne suis pas sûr. Je trouve que l'immigration réussit très bien maintenant, mais au moins l'accueil et l'intégration. Merci, Madame le maire. Il n'y a rien d'autre à ajouter. S'il y en a qui ont des questions, je peux essayer de les répondre. Mais...
Merci, conseiller Bourgeois. So what is the wish of council on this? We have an alternative? So, non? Ah bon.
Je trouve par procédure officielle, on doit
C'est beau.
sur la résolution.
Donc, laquelle des résolutions on en a?
Il y en a juste une.
Donc, on va voter sur votre résolution. C'est bien ça, conseiller Bourgeois?
Merci, c'est exactement ça.
Est-ce qu'il y a des questions avant?
C'était secondé par la maire adjointe conseillère.
Oui. Il n'y a pas de questions.
Donc, il n'y a pas de questions, c'est ça, là? Je comprends bien?
Oui.
Donc, on va voter sur les motions. La première, c'est la motion de conseiller Bourgeois. Non.
Voter.
Donc, la motion est défaite 5-4.
Merci.
Merci. Madame la greffière.
Okay. Next is engineering acquisition of GPS equipment. It was postponed from the February 3rd meeting. Not sure, Elaine, are you going to, Renee? Renee, are you going to provide a little bit of background on the findings? I can read the recommendation into the record if you wish.
Sure, I can provide a summary of the council rec form. So at the last council meeting, or last time we had the discussion, there were concerns about where these GPS units were coming from, where they were made, and also if tariffs would be applied. So administration did some research. We found other companies that would provide an equivalent. One is based in Switzerland. The other one is based in Asia. So there's no Canadian companies that manufacture these GPS units for surveying purposes. The provider we currently have, the equipment is called Trimble. It's a US-based company. However, the units are made in Taiwan and Thailand, I believe, somewhere in Asia. And the distributor is 100% Canadian. It is called Cancel, which we've been dealing with several years. And the units are currently in Halifax, so there would be no tariffs applied to these units. And nor would there be in the future if we need to renew this equipment, because again, they're not manufactured in the United States. So when we looked, and I think it's a very important point here, is that we are not looking to renew the entire fleet of GPS units that we currently own, only approximately half. So if council were to decide to go with another provider, that would mean great additional cost, because we would have to change our entire unit of GPS equipment, because everything has to be synchronized together and working as one system, if you wish. Other than that, I think the rest of the information is in the council report form, and we're here for questions.
Merci René. Conseiller Léger.
Yeah, thank you. I'd move the resolution. I think that and maybe I'll make a comment after. I'll move the resolution, seeing where they're made in Taiwan.
Merci. Et Conseiller Richard, vous appuyez? OK, merci.
I think the bigger question, though, moving forward is everything that's happening with the U.S. And I think in terms of procurement, maybe we should look at where our procurement is coming from, and expect that if it's U.S. based, we should be looking at an alternative for the moment. And it's not always going to be the case, perhaps, but there's certainly a lot of volatility, and we all have American friends and so on, and unfortunately we're facing very difficult times. Other municipalities have decided to go that route, and I think it's important that we look at things on a one-by-one basis. In this case, they are a global company. The products are made in Taiwan as they are made elsewhere, and then the distributor, as you mentioned, was Canadian. So I think we just need to make sure that we have all that information when making decisions now. It's become more complicated. From what I hear, it becomes more complicated for large vehicles like fire trucks, depending on limited manufacturing ability. So we're going to probably have some discussions in and around, what we do in the future. Well, I think we're fortunate on buses. A number of them are made in, some are made in Winnipeg and some are made in Quebec. Possibly there are parts coming from both sides. But in any event, I think we need to continue the conversation. And maybe, Jacques, you want to add something? I see your lights on. Thank you.
Oui. Peut-être que je pourrais commencer. Merci pour la question, conseiller. From an administration perspective, and I know that Jacques, our CFO, will give you a bit of an update on some of the elements, but just to provide you a sense, we're also working with the FCM and with UMNB on ensuring that we have some consistency across the country as we look at what our levers are from a city perspective versus what the levers are of what we're limited by. But maybe I'll ask Jacques to kind of give you a bit more detail on the work that started a couple of weeks ago as we start looking at that question.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, through to Conseiller Léger. So yes, we've been doing a lot of work since this whole conversation has started with tariffs. Right now, and again, it has changed dynamically from almost day to day, but we are really prepared for it. So right now we're taking the approach, we're really encouraging to buy Canadian whenever possible. With our procurement team, we've identified the thresholds under the different trade agreements that we are able to apply that wording that we will award to a Canadian company, or we will give preferential treatment, which would apply to New Brunswick companies or so on. So that is in place. So every procurement that is going out now, we're putting that into place. Where it can become complicated is in terms of specialization, where we already have a lot invested in certain technology. Those are more long-term decisions that we'll need to really plan ahead, in the next 3, 4, 5 years, whenever it comes time to renew. We know that we'll be making decisions to move potentially to more of a local product. And there are other products we're simply at the mercy of the market. If you look at the technology that we use sometimes, whether it be Microsoft or those types of companies. So, but we've done a lot of work. It's something that we can bring to council and will bring to council for a good discussion. But we've done a lot of work, and it's already in our administrative processes that we are looking at these tariffs as we speak.
Donc, merci beaucoup. Merci, Jacques. Oui. Ah, conseiller Richard, allez-y.
Merci, Madame Adjointe Thériault. Yeah, I just wanted to, I like what Jacques brought up, where we already have this in place, and it's a long-term decision if you want to change into all these. So I should have turned my light off. You guys had it all covered. Merci beaucoup.
Merci.
Merci, conseiller Richard. We have a motion on the floor. Donc, un vote, s'il vous plaît. Est-ce qu'on va là? Ici, là? Non. Moody Hotel. So the vote is unanimous. Pour. Merci.
Merci.
Okay, next, our reading of bylaws, et lecture des arrêtés municipaux. 11.2 and 11.4 have been postponed for second and third reading as we postpone the development. I will provide by first reading for 11.1. Council gave me permission during the 7.1 item. So a bylaw and amendment of a bylaw relating to the adoption of the City of Moncton's municipal plan being bylaw Z 222.47 neighborhood and housing zoning bylaw amendments. That's the first reading. Arrêté portant modification de l'arrêté concernant l'adoption du plan municipal de la ville de Moncton sur l'arrêté Z 222.47, modification de l'arrêté de zonage quartier et logement. C'est la première lecture, and this was for approval of 7.1. I'm going to give 11.3, and that's second reading, and it's subject to 358 Ryan Street. I will need council's permission to give second reading. Councilor Crosman.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. So you need a motion from council
Yes.
in order to do second reading, so I'll ask for a mover and a seconder for that motion. Moved by Councilor Kingston, seconded by Councilor Richard. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Or do we
Oh, no,
vote?
we vote.
Sorry.
We're gonna vote.
We can't do it. Okay, perfect.
We have the technology.
Perfect.
Okay. Note that Councilor, Deputy Mayor Terrio is not in the room, and we have one nay vote. Councilor Butler.
Thank you. Second reading, or third reading, sorry.
Second reading.
Yes.
Bylaw and amendment of a bylaw relating to the adoption of the City of Moncton zoning bylaw being bylaw Z 222.42, 358 Ryan Street. That's second reading. Arrêté portant modification de l'arrêté concernant l'adoption de l'arrêté de zonage de la ville de Moncton sur l'arrêté Z 222.42, 358 rue Ryan. C'est la deuxième lecture. I will need third reading. Oh, conseil. On va faire la troisième lecture. J'ai besoin d'une motion du Conseil. 11.2, 11.3, je m'excuse. Ryan Street, c'est...
Est-ce que je peux avoir la motion, conseiller Richard?
Ton micro.
Conseiller Richard, vous avez proposé appuyer, s'il vous plaît. Conseiller Kingston. Merci beaucoup.
A bylaw and amendment of a bylaw relating to the adoption, oh, sorry, yes, we need to do the vote. Sorry, Diane. Conseiller Léjard, Conseiller Kingston. Yep. Merci. One nay vote. Councillor Brian Butler. a bylaw, an amendment of a bylaw relating to the adoption of the City of Moncton zoning bylaw being bylaw Z222.42, 358 Ryan Street. This is a third reading. Arrêté portant modification de l'arrêté concernant l'adoption de l'arrêté de zonage de la ville de Moncton sur l'arrêté Z222.4, 358 rue Ryan. C'est la troisième lecture. Next is notices of motion, un avis de motion et résolution, et c'est une motion du conseiller Bourgeois. Conseiller Bourgeois, aimerais-tu lire ta motion, s'il vous plaît?
S'il vous plaît, petit attache avec parce que moi, c'est ça que je vois entre mon écran et le document.
Okay. Councillor Crosman, did you want to read it into the record since you're the seconder? Would you like to read it in the record, or I can? It's totally up to you. Okay. Whereas Council unanimously adopted Plan Moncton in 2013, and it is still in effect, whereas Plan Moncton in Section D-3 asks Council to pursue the continued development of downtown Moncton as a high-quality urban environment by discouraging surface parking, amongst other things. Whereas flat surface parking lots represent approximately 40% of the downtown area, a proportion that is not conducive to effective downtown development and densification, whereas flat surface parking lots provide lower tax revenue than fully developed lots, whereas inexpensive flat surface parking lots reduce the feasibility of public transit and additional parking garages, and whereas the City of Moncton has a policy to purchase available lots in the Turtle Creek for a public purpose, namely the protection of the watersheds as a water source, and that a similar policy could be beneficial to Moncton citizens in regard to flat surface parking lots, be it therefore resolved that Council adopt a policy to proactively purchase flat surface parking lots in the downtown designation area for the purpose of giving them to developers who propose the most effective developments of a flat surface parking lots. This will be brought back to a future council meeting. 12.2 Canada Games 2029 Amendment Joint Host Community Resolution. It's a housekeeping item. Isabel, did you want to, or the city manager, would you like to speak to this, or? Okay.
So, thank you. The items that were amended are listed in the council report form. This was a clerical error when they put together the contract. They took the resolution from the 2025 Canada Games, and they had since changed for the 2029 Games. And so because they were omitted, both St. John and Moncton are reintegrating them in a new motion. So it's really housekeeping. There are no changes to any of the preceding adoptions or amounts.
Je suis perdue. Le conseiller Légère, c'est ça?
Yeah, move the motion.
So it's moved by Councillor Leger and seconded by Councillor Kingston.
Est-ce qu'il y a des questions, s'il vous plaît? Sinon, on va passer au vote.
Unanime.
Donc, c'est unanime. 9. Merci.
I believe you have an appointment.
We have an appointment to the Greater Moncton Airport Authority, Mr. Peter McIntyre, who will be reappointed. Donc, merci.
We need a motion for that. We need a mover and a seconder.
Est-ce que je peux avoir quelqu'un pour conseiller Légère? Conseiller Edgett.
Can we bring up the vote?
On the motion, all those in favor? No, je vois pas. Ah, mon Dieu. Okay. Bon.
Conseiller Léger, conseiller Leblanc. Merci. Unanime.
Unanimous en faveur. Merci, unanime. Donc, Madame Lagrafia.
On a fini.
So we've ended the meeting. C'est vrai, c'est toujours toi, conseiller Richard, j'ai oublié. Merci, merci.
Merci tous, merci tous.
Oh my God.